Chapter 472. As soon as these words came out, it immediately caused a great uproar, and then people began to talk about it. The place where the abbess of Yue Nunnery preached was not far away, so it didn't take them long to get there. Pushing open the door of the main hall, they saw a mess on the ground. The rush cushions were randomly thrown around. Some of them were stacked together, and some of them were placed in a mess. What was worse was that one was even standing, and there were some scraps of paper thrown there. The whole scene had nothing to do with the so-called solemn Buddhist hall at all. Moreover, it was the abbess of Yue Nunnery who was preaching here before. Puyu Nun had always been well-mannered, but at this time, she couldn't help getting angry and looked up at Huiqing. Puyu Nun, look, she made a mess here, and she still has the cheek to eat lunch secretly. Seeing the situation here, Huiqing was immediately overjoyed. She reached out to point at Xiao Wanru and said loudly. She was worried that other people in the nunnery had already cleaned up. Without evidence, she didn't dare to speak carelessly. Now she was not afraid. The evidence was still there. Although she had gone too far, the fifth miss had also gone too far. How could this be? No way. When we left with Miss, we clearly cleaned it up. Chu Lu and Yu Jie looked incredulous. They took a deep breath and their faces were full of horror. Yu Jie seemed to think of something. She suddenly reached out to point at Huiqing and said angrily, Huiqing Nun, even if you want to frame our miss, you shouldn't throw the rush cushions that were originally neatly placed like this. Do you know that this is disrespectful to Buddha? You are disrespectful to Buddha. Why are you still practicing Buddhism and chanting scriptures? Huiqing Nun, when the nuns left, this place was still fine. Even after the nuns finished listening to the sutra, this place was still clean. Our miss just tidied it up a little and put the futon aside. Why did you make this place so messy in such a short time? What's your intention? Our miss was driven down the mountain. What benefits do you get? Chu Lu was so angry that her face turned pale. She reached out to pull Huiqing. What nonsense are you talking about? This is your... Huiqing was stunned for a moment. She immediately understood that she had been bitten back, so she anxiously defended herself loudly. Yes, this is what we cleaned up. Look, I accidentally bumped into it. There are some scratches here. Without blushing, Yu Jie pointed at the back of her hand where she had accidentally bumped into it before and said loudly, My miss and I cleaned it up. At that time, a nun in the nunnery saw it. If you don't believe me, you can ask who was outside the nunnery at that time. Did we finish our work inside and leave? Did anyone hear the sound of us cleaning inside? Chu Lu became more and more confident. The Buddhist hall shouldn't be in such a mess, but now it is in such a mess. Needless to say, someone must be trying to harm this young lady. Zhang Qilan stood on Xiao Wanru's side. Looking at the hall scattered all over the ground, she shook her head and sighed, Alas, it's a hall for Buddhist meditation. It's really... Although she didn't say anything, Master Puyu and the nuns who followed her all blushed. Even if she didn't clean it up, it was impossible for the hall to be in such a mess. Now it was in a mess and became evidence against the fifth Miss Xiao. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed that someone had deliberately framed her. Puyu Nun, please uphold justice. Xiao Wanru looked at Puyu Nun calmly with a pair of beautiful eyes with irresistible depth. Fifth Miss, don't slander me. Huiqing saw that the situation was not good and scolded. Huiqing Nun, this is the Buddhist hall. All the gods and Buddhas in the world will see it. Evil will be punished with evil, and good will be rewarded with good. Xiao Wanru said coldly. She looked at Huiqing coldly with her only pair of eyes, which made Huiqing shiver involuntarily. No matter what your intention is to drive me down the mountain, it's not up to you to decide whether to go down the mountain or not. Do you really think that I'm so easy to bully? There's no flawless trap in this world, and there's no airtight wall. These words, which had a hidden meaning, immediately caused the surrounding crowd to whisper to each other. Listening to all kinds of condemnation and looking at Puyu Nun's gloomy expression, Huiqing regretted it to the extreme at this time. If she had known that the fifth Miss Xiao was not so easy to deal with, she should have thought about it carefully. How could such a thing happen now? At that time, when she saw the chaotic scene in front of her, she only felt that she had something on the fifth Miss Xiao and could do whatever she wanted to her. Only now did she realize that it was not that the fifth Miss Xiao did not tidy up the situation, but that she had deliberately messed up the evidence to frame her. She had shot herself in the foot. Hui Qing apologized to the fifth Miss. Puyu Nun said coldly, "Puyu Nun, this really has nothing to do with me. I just saw that it was a mess here and thought that the fifth Miss and her servant did it on purpose." Hui Qing argued loudly, unwilling to give up. "Why did we do this? To make it convenient for you to drive us down the mountain?" Xiao Wanru smiled slightly. Her smile was elegant and indifferent. "There is such an evil nun among the nuns in this nunnery. How can they cultivate Buddhism?" Zhang Qilan sneered. Zhang Lanjua looked up and down at Hui Qing and said loudly, "You don't let her eat and let her do the heaviest and dirtiest work. Whose young lady can still cultivate here? Or does this nun have a grudge against this young lady?" He reached out to pull a servant beside him and the servant girl behind his sister and asked them to tell the conversation between Hui Qing and Xiao Wanru in the hall. They vividly retold the scene at that time. After she finished speaking, Hui Qing's face turned blue, green, and then white. In her anger just now, she didn't know how she had said that. Now that she had repeated it in front of so many people, she found that her words were full of loopholes. "Fifth Miss Xiao, I'm really sorry. I lost my temper when I saw the mess here and said those uncontrollable words." Hui Qing had to grit her teeth and apologize to Xiao Wanru. "Isn't it the nuns doing that? Haven't you done enough of this kind of thing during this period of time?" Xiao Wanru's face showed a trace of coldness. "Fifth Miss Xiao, the Yue nunnery will punish Hui Qing." Puyu Nun coughed in a low voice and said. Xiao Wanru looked at Puyu Nun with a kind of rippling color in her eyes, but her eyes were cold. "Puyu Nun, I know that your nunnery has promised my grandmother to let me observe filial piety and cultivate here for 3 years. I have also paid enough incense money and even rebuilt the previous yard for your nunnery. Why can't you tolerate me so much? You scold me, hit me, and starve me from time to time. As soon as I defend myself, you ask me to get out of the mountain. Is this how your Yuhui nunnery treats women who cultivate? They received money but didn't do anything. Moreover, they asked their miss to do this and that. Such a small miss couldn't even eat her fill. No wonder she was so thin." It was not only the brother and sister of the Zhang family who were filled with righteous indignation. Many pilgrims couldn't bear it anymore and loudly condemned the practice of the Yuhui nunnery. Puyu Nun's forehead was sweating. If this matter got out of hand, she couldn't handle it well. A nun squeezed in from outside the crowd and bowed respectfully to Xiao Wanru. "Fifth Miss, our nunnery master said that she would find out the truth that Hui Qing deliberately framed you. She also promised that this kind of thing would not happen again in the future. You just need to cultivate in peace and don't care about the nunnery." Hui Qing disrespected Buddha and lied. She is punished to clean all the Buddha halls every day for a year. This punishment was very heavy. There were many Buddha halls in the Yuhui nunnery. It would take at least a day to clean all of them. That was to say, Hui Qing would be sweeping the floor every day for the next year. She used to be a supervisor of a Buddha hall. She only needed to follow her master to chant scriptures and listen to lectures. Now she was reduced to the lowest level of a nun sweeping the floor. Her face suddenly changed greatly. When she wanted to argue, she saw Puyu Nun's cold gaze. She had to gasp and lower her head. Her face was extremely resentful, but she didn't dare to say no. "Will your Yuhui nunnery keep your words? After we leave, you bullied this miss again?" Zhang Lanjue felt that he had seen too many such shameless people. Although he hadn't thought that there were scum in Buddhism before, now that he had seen them, he should think more about it. Of course, he would say it. He was a playboy, so he always said and did whatever he wanted. He didn't think that it was a slap in the face to say such words in front of the nuns. Not only Puyu Nun, but also all the nuns felt ashamed. "Child Zhang, don't worry. There won't be such a thing again. The fifth Mrs. Identity is extraordinary, and we can't bully her." Puyu Nun had to brace herself and explain. Her previous identity was not simple. "Didn't you bully her? This should be the fifth Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion, right? The Yuhui nunnery is really amazing. They even dare to bully Ru and Great Elder Princess and the people of Duke Xing's mansion." Zhang Qilan was smart. Thinking of Xiao Wanru's words before and after, coupled with some rumors and speculation she had heard, she immediately understood Xiao Wanru's identity and sneered. In a word, all the pilgrims were shocked and looked at Xiao Wanru in front of them in astonishment. The news that Duke Xing's mansion had recognized their lineal miss had been spread in the capital city these days. Many people knew it. It was also said that the fifth Miss Xiao was going to observe mourning for her parents in the nunnery. It had only been a few days, but she had been bullied to this extent. She was the granddaughter of and great elder princess and the lineal miss of Duke Xing's mansion. If it were someone else, would they have been bullied to death? However, some smart people thought of another possibility. It was said that everyone in Duke Xing's mansion didn't like the fifth Miss Xiao. The famous first Miss Xiao lived in the Yuhui nunnery and was familiar with the nuns in the nunnery. Could it be that the first Miss Xiao wanted to use others to deal with the fifth Miss Xiao? Otherwise, how could a nun in the nunnery have the courage to do such a thing? It's our nunnery's fault for failing to discipline. There will be no such thing in the future. Fifth Miss, please forgive our nunnery's fault for failing to investigate. Puyu Nun's attitude was extremely humble. She was the receptionist monk of the Yuhui nunnery. She had always been good at talking and knew what to do at this time. Nun, you don't have to be so polite. This matter has nothing to do with you. Please help me investigate this Qinghui nun. Why does she want to drive me down the mountain? What good does it do for her? Xiao Wanru didn't insist on investigating the fault of the Yuhui nunnery. She just quietly put all the blame on Huiqing. Who got the biggest benefit? Chapter 473. Thank you for your generosity, 5th Mississippi. Don't worry. I will find out the truth. Puyu Nun secretly wiped her cold sweat. She was very grateful that Xiao Wanru did not pursue the responsibility of the Yuhui nunnery. Since the matter had been settled, the onlookers dispersed. Of course, the pilgrims who dispersed also spread the news. Everyone speculated about 5th Miss Xiao's last words. Who could 5th Miss Xiao, who had just come to the mountain, make enemies with? Even if they did, who dared to deal with her like this? Did the nuns have the guts to do so? If not, then who was going to deal with 5th Miss Xiao? Could it be that the first Miss Xiao, who had a good reputation in the Xiao's mansion, was really just dignified and elegant on the surface? Was she actually a vicious person? There were various opinions. Some people said this while others said that. But it happened in front of their eyes and there was evidence. Many people thought that it had something to do with the first Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion. Didn't they all say that the people of Duke Xing's mansion didn't like this 5th Miss Xiao? Shan Yu Nun also left with a group of nuns of the Yuhui nunnery, leaving the Zhang siblings and Xiao Wanru alone. Are you the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing? Zhang Lanjue looked Xiao Wanru up and down curiously and asked with a smile. She was about the same age as Hao Wanru and was a clever little girl. I am. Thank you for what you did just now. Xiao Wanru bowed to the brother and sister generously. It's okay. I just saw injustice on the road. Anyone who sees this kind of thing will stand up. Zhang Lanjue said proudly. He felt that this time his mother would definitely not scold him for making trouble and would definitely praise him. What are you thanking me for? You are so polite. Anyone who sees this kind of thing will say it. The nuns of the Yuhui nunnery are too much of a bully. Recently, I will also live in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time. If someone treats me like this, I can't bear it. Zhang Qilan curled her lips coquettishly and then took Xiao Wanru's hand. Can I live by your side then? I heard that staying for a long time is different from staying for a short time. The rooms for short-term stays were all grouped together and were usually arranged by the nunnery. Those that stayed for less than a month were considered as short-term stays, while those that stayed for longer usually stayed for more than a month. The nunnery could pick out some courtyards with more beautiful scenery for them to stay in. If they were not satisfied, they could renovate or add more at their own expense. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yanru were of this type. Basically, there were no nearby pilgrims as neighbors. The environment was mainly quiet and elegant, which was beneficial for the pilgrims who lived here for a long time to cultivate in peace. Well, I'll help you ask if there are other courtyards nearby. Xiao Wanru also had a good impression of this straightforward Miss Zhang, so she thought for a while and said with a smile. She had not been in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time, so she really didn't know the environment around her. It doesn't matter if you don't. Can I come to play with you when I live here in the future? Will it disturb your cultivation? Zhang Qilan didn't make things difficult for Xiao Wanru. She knew that she didn't have the final say in this matter, so she immediately suggested with a smile. Xiao Wanru, who was exquisite and beautiful in front of her, made her eyes light up. It was the first time that she had seen such a beautiful girl, so she subconsciously wanted to be close to Xiao Wanru. Moreover, Xiao Wanru looked kind and nice. She didn't look like a miss from an aristocratic family who looked down on others. Although Prime Minister Zhang also had an extraordinary family background, he was not from a noble family in the capital city. The official system was somewhat different from the noble system. It paid more attention to ability than family background. Xiao Wanru's family background was very strange. She used to be the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion and belonged to the official system, but now she was from Duke Xing's mansion and the granddaughter of Ru, and great elder princess. She was a real miss from an aristocratic family, and she was the most noble one. It won't disturb me. I still have some time after chanting scriptures for my parents every day, Xiao Wanru said softly. Okay, then it's a deal. I will definitely come to you then. Zhang Qilan didn't hide her joy and said with a smile. Zhang Lanjue wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He looked at his sister and then at Xiao Wanru. He poked his sister's waist with his arm. Brother, what's the matter? Zhang Qilan was talking enthusiastically, but she was interrupted. She turned her head and said unhappily. Zhang Lanjue silently mouthed at her. However, Zhang Qilan was in the joy of finding a close friend, so she didn't have any connection with her brother. After not understanding, she said loudly, Brother, just say what you want to say. How can I hear you so softly? Seeing that Xiao Wanru and her servant had turned around, Zhang Lanjue blushed. After stamping his feet, he gritted his teeth and said loudly, Censor, octagonal censor. What's wrong with the censor? Zhang Qilan didn't understand the meaning of Zhang Lanjue's words. She blinked and asked. Xiao Wanru understood and couldn't help but show a smile on her face. Just now, she saw the first young Master Zhang looking at the censor with burning eyes outside the hall. At first glance, she knew that he liked the censor very much. That was why she picked up the incense burner and lured him over. She didn't expect him to be so persistent that he hadn't forgotten about it even now. My censor, my censor. Seeing that his sister was so stupid that she didn't understand, Zhang Lanjue couldn't help but pat her head. He could only hint again while peeping at Xiao Wanru. At that time, it was very chaotic. He didn't notice where the censor he liked was. It was not convenient to ask Xiao Wanru directly, so he wanted to remind his sister to ask. He didn't expect that she was so stupid, Zhang Lanjue thought angrily. Child Zhang, do you want to talk about the censor that was missing before? Xiao Wanru couldn't stand it anymore. After a laugh, she said bluntly. Yes, that censor. Where is it? Zhang Lanjue nodded excitedly. Finally, there was a smart one. The censor is under the largest Buddha platform in the side hall. First young Master Zhang can find it. Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Okay, thank you, fifth Miss Xiao. Zhang Lanjue couldn't stay any longer. After cupping his hands to Xiao Wanru, he picked up his robe and ran out quickly. The servant chased after him and called him. He didn't answer. His mind was full of the perfect censor that he was about to put together. At that time, it would be one of the collections that he could show off everywhere. Looking at her brother running away, Zhang Qilan felt ashamed. Sure enough, her brother was a playboy. Look at what he did, it made people feel ashamed. Fortunately, she was also a straightforward person. Although she felt ashamed, she did not feel much discomfort and got along well with Xiao Wanru. The two of them sat aside and talked while several maids worked together to clean up the hall. After cleaning up, Madame Zhang also sent someone over. She asked Zhang Qilan to go over to worship the ancestors again. Zhang Qilan then reluctantly got up and left. When Zhang Qilan returned to the main hall, she found that the religious ceremony had not begun at all. She was immediately unhappy. She pouted and went to the side hall to sit on a chair. She said coquettishly, "Mother, I was talking with fifth Miss Xiao. Why did you call me over in a hurry? We were talking happily." After saying that, he looked at Zhang Lanjue, who had his head down, and immediately knew that his elder brother had been scolded by his mother. He immediately put away the little emotions in his heart and became careful. "You'd better not get involved in the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion." Madame Zhang looked at the brother and sister and frowned. She frowned and said, "Mother, it is obviously the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery who bullied me. If we let them bully me like this, will I be bullied by them the next time I live here?" Zhang Qilan took Madame Zhang's hand and shook it unwillingly. Her words made Madame Zhang fall silent for a while. Putting herself in Madame Zhang's shoes, all parents felt sorry for her. Thinking that the fifth Miss Xiao was observing mourning for her father at such a young age, and it was said that she was forced to leave Duke Xing's mansion. It seemed that no one liked her. Madame Zhang couldn't help sighing softly. This girl was a pitiful person. "Mother, fifth Miss Xiao is very nice. She looks younger than me. She is thin and pitiful." Thinking of Xiao Wanru, who was dressed in a loose black robe, Zhang Qilan felt more and more sorry for her. The loose black robe covered her like a wide cloth bag. But even so, she was still good-looking. Okay, I don't object to your relationship with her. I just want you to be careful. Don't meddle in the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion." Madame Zhang said helplessly to her daughter. Daughters were always spoiled. Madame Zhang did spoil her daughter, but her son was raised as tough as he could. Fortunately, her daughter was sensible and did not become spoiled. Although Madame Zhang did not know the inside story of this matter, she always felt that it would not be simple. Otherwise, why would a miss from an aristocratic family, who had been found, be forced to go up the mountain without the protection of her biological parents? "Mother, is it all right? If there is nothing else, I will go out." When Zhang Lanjue saw that his sister had coaxed his mother, he immediately beamed with joy. He stood up and shook his robe. He had found the incense burner, but he had not had time to look at it. At this time, while the religious ceremony had not begun, he could enjoy it. "Stop!" Madame Zhang's face darkened and she shouted at him. "Mother!" Zhang Lanjue was pitiful. He looked back. "You stay here and don't go anywhere. The nunnery is full of women. Don't offend anyone." Madame Zhang said. "Mother, you don't believe that nonsense, do you?" Zhang Lanjue felt that he had been wronged. Where did this young and beautiful nun come from? He had taken a fancy to her and offended her, and then caused trouble. "Shut up!" Madame Zhang's hand slammed on the table. It was a rumor, and she had also heard it. But later, according to Prime Minister Zhang's words, it seemed that it was not a rumor, but true. Madame Zhang did not want her son to encounter such a thing. Her son's temperament was not very good. It was safest to keep him by her side. "What's wrong?" A leisurely voice came from the meditation room. Chapter 474. Go. You're the one who's narrow-minded. No wonder fifth Miss is angry. The voice in the meditation room became more and more leisurely, with a sense of transcendence, which could wash away the dirt in one's soul. Just from the voice alone, he could tell that the person inside was an expert who cultivated in tranquility and in action. "Master, it's clear that they messed it up and deliberately framed me. Master, please testify for me." Hui Qing was kneeling at the door. Her face was full of tears as she propped herself up in anger. "Silly child, why are you talking about this? Go and sweep the floor. Don't do this again." In the meditation room, Master Pu Shan's voice became low, and he was chanting in a low voice. This meant that he no longer cared about Hui Qing's matter. "Senior sister, get up. Master has never cared about this kind of thing." Hui Ming came out from a dark corner at the side of the house and pulled Hui Qing up to persuade her. First Miss is the master's favorite disciple. Her paintings have some of the master's true essence. Originally, she could have stayed on the mountain to learn better. Even if she couldn't make the master more famous, she could have continued to learn the master's painting skills. But because of this fifth Miss, First Miss was forced to go down the mountain. How could she still have the face to stay here? Hui Qing stood up with a face full of anger and resentment. but she did not dare to raise her voice for fear that Master Pushan would be angry if she heard it. She and Hui Ming were both apprentices of Master Pushan. They had been friends for many years, so of course they would think of their master in everything. They also got along well with first Miss Xiao. Suddenly, the fifth Miss of the Xiao family came here one day, and the first Miss Xiao, who had gotten along well with them, had to go down the mountain because of her reputation. The two of them vented their anger on Xiao Wanru. That was why they were making things difficult for him. Senior sister, our arms can't twist the thighs. Let's wait and see first. When there's a chance in the future, we'll help eldest miss. Hui Ming saw that her voice had unconsciously become louder and was so frightened that she hurriedly reached out to cover her mouth as she whispered. Hui Qing nodded. A gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. Wasn't he supposed to sweep the floor for a year? It was fine. She still had 2 years. Gritting his teeth, he took another look at his master's meditation room and then retreated with light steps. Even if she was filled with resentment, she could not disturb her master's peaceful cultivation. Master, fifth Miss Xiao said that she wanted to use first Mrs. Quiet room. Hui Ming took 2 steps forward and respectfully reported to the Zen room. He felt that the fifth Miss Xiao was really overestimating herself and dared to make such a request. Everyone knew that the first Miss Xiao was the person the master valued the most. Although she was not the direct disciple, the master's love for the first Miss Xiao had long surpassed the relationship between the master and the disciple. At this moment, the first Miss Xiao had just left, and she made such a request to the abbess. She really thought that she was so shameless. After the master refused, he would directly report it to the fifth Miss Xiao and see if she was embarrassed. Let her use it. A low and slow voice came from the meditation room calmly. Master. Hui Ming's eyes widened. Even Hui Qing, who had walked to the entrance of the courtyard, stopped in her tracks and turned around in shock. Neither of them had expected this answer. Master. Hui Qing murmured. You can leave now. Don't make too much trouble with fifth Miss Xiao in the future. The voice in the meditation room became more and more distant. Hui Qing and Hui Ming looked at each other. The master had really given up the first Miss Xiao's silence room. Xiao Wanru went to Xiao Yinru's courtyard a few days later. The 2 courtyards were far away from each other, but there was a straight line to pass through. This road was against a high wall on one side. The distance from one end to the other was the distance between Xiao Wanru's current courtyard and Xiao Yinru's former courtyard. It was a very high wall, but it was not the courtyard wall of the Yuhui nunnery. There was only a small side door on such a long wall. Yu Jie deliberately kept an eye on this small side door. Basically, it was only opened for a while in the morning, and no one else came out. Only some daily consumables such as vegetables were sent in. There was someone inside the door. They were also nuns in black clothes, but they looked much more delicate than the ones outside. Yu Jie even saw a few of them who were particularly beautiful. This should be the place where the former emperors and some palace maids who served them at that time lived. The former emperor's only son was Chu Luqian. When Chu Luqian was born, the former emperor was already in poor health. Xiao Wanru sometimes wondered why he didn't turn his son into a girl at that time. If so, wouldn't all the trouble be gone? At that time, the emperor had already held the power. The former empress, who was pregnant, could no longer control the imperial palace and could only hide in a corner of the palace. It was not difficult at all to kill the child she gave birth to or turn the child into a princess. Then why did he keep Chu Luqian? Although he was in poor health, as long as he existed, this matter would not stop. The rumor that the emperor had robbed his nephew of the throne would continue to spread. Was it really the emperor's kindness that he didn't use the method to solve the problem once and for all? The former emperor only had one son, and the other of the former emperor all lived in this high wall. Fortunately, it was said that the former emperor did not have many s. After observing for a few days and figuring out the pattern, Yu Jie stopped monitoring the side door. On her way to Xiao Yenru's silence room, Xiao Wanru passed by the side door. She looked at the small side door, which was about the height of a person and more than 1 meter wide, and then looked at the high walls which were like palace walls. After a moment of silence, she continued to walk forward. Miss, there are a few nuns living in the courtyard outside. They are the nuns who guard the small door here. Yujie reported the news she had heard to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru nodded calmly and continued to walk forward. The door of the courtyard where Xiao Yinru lived before was closed. Yujie stepped forward and opened the door with the key. Since Pushun Nun agreed, the key of the courtyard had been sent to Yujie. She pushed the door open and found that the courtyard was very clean. It could be seen that someone cleaned it on weekdays. The courtyard was larger than Xiao Wanru's previous one. Several main rooms were arranged in a row, with wing rooms on the side. It was similar to the courtyard where Xiao Wanru lived in Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The other rooms were tightly closed, except for the second room on the right, which was slightly closed. It should be Xiao Yinru's so-called silence room. She pushed the door open and found that the floor inside was all made of the wood of Manchurian willow, which was a bit ancient in color. There was a window on the wall at the back, which occupied most of the wall. When she drew the curtain, she saw a large expanse of sunshine coming in. Outside the window were the scattered mountains, which were of different heights and heights. Just looking out of the window, she felt relaxed and happy. No wonder all the misses who came to the Yuhui nunnery in the last life tried their best to take a look at Xiao Yinru's silence room. Painting here could not only make one's soul quiet, but also make one's heart peaceful and full of inspiration. Miss, it's so beautiful here. It's much more beautiful than your room. Yujie couldn't help sighing. Is it set on the edge of the cliff? Chu Lu tilted her head and looked down from the window. It should be. It's not easy to build it here. This kind of place can't be built casually. The nunnery will usually leave this kind of place for pilgrims to enjoy the scenery. Once this courtyard is occupied, others can't see the scenery in front of them. Yujie felt that this was a loss for the Yuhui nunnery. This courtyard has not been built for a long time. Xiao Wanru looked around, walked a few steps slowly, came to the window and said, "It should be specially built by Xiao Yinru for her to live here." The Yuhui nunnery is too obedient to the first Miss Xiao. She just came here to live for a few months and fish for fame. But the Yuhui nunnery gave up such a big scenery to her. She doesn't think it's a loss. Yujie curled her lips and deeply felt that the first Miss Xiao was luxurious under the low key. Everyone thought that the first Miss Xiao went to the mountains to cultivate. Looking at the scenery, Yujie felt that she would not feel bad even if she cultivated for a few years, let alone a few months. Yujie, who grew up in the mountains, yearned for this kind of life very much. There's nothing to lose. I think the first Miss Xiao has given me a lot of benefits. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, with a trace of darkness at the bottom of her eyes. In the last life, Xiao Yinru did treat the Yuhui nunnery very well. After entering the Imperial Palace, she also rewarded the Yuhui nunnery from time to time, and even extended her kindness to the former empress. In the last life, Xiao Wanru heard a rumor related to Xiao Yinru's silence room, but she didn't know whether it was true or not. But it didn't matter. From now on, this place would belong to her. Xiao Wanru, who lived on the mountain, began to live a quiet life. She lived a very ordinary but fulfilling life. Every day, she read scriptures to her parents and embroidered like ordinary girls from aristocratic families. Sometimes, she learned medicine from Mingqiu Nun. When she was in Jiangzhou, she was too hasty to learn well. Sometimes, she walked a long distance to the silence room to paint. Xiao Wanru had been able to draw portraits for beauties in her last life. She was also very talented in painting, and she was very good at it. She also liked painting very much. In such a quiet environment, she also had a good feeling. There was no sun and moon in the mountains. Gradually, the fifth Miss Xiao and the rumors about the fifth Miss Xiao disappeared in other rumors. There had been no lack of other rumors in the capital city. Now, the most popular one was the marriage of the first Miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The first Miss Qin had a bad reputation. She was going to get married. In order to climb the social ladder, she kicked her ex-fiancé away. After that, she engaged the current one. Then she tried to seduce Prince Cheng. After she failed, she tried to pretend to be the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing. Then she was driven out. This time, only a red sedan chair was carried from Ningyuan Army General's mansion to Duke Yong's mansion. Originally, only a few close relatives and friends were invited, but no one knew that the news had spread out somehow. On the day of the wedding, after Qin Yuru's sedan chair was carried to Duke Yong's mansion, many onlookers on both sides threw rotten eggs and cabbages. Chapter 475. Mother, do I have to go too? Xiao Yinru looked at Madame of Duke Xing with displeasure. She frowned slightly and looked a little arrogant. But even so, she was still a very beautiful Mississippi. Under her willowy eyebrows, her eyes were leisurely. Although she had a little arrogance of an aristocratic family, she was not the kind that was very annoying. People would even feel that the woman in front of her was beautiful with a little elegance, very beautiful and attractive. It was no wonder that everyone said that the first Miss Xiao was talented and beautiful. Not only was she talented, but she was also very beautiful. She was a rare beauty. The Empress has issued a decree. You have to go at this age. You were in the Yuhui nunnery before, but now you have to go after you go down the mountain. Madame of Duke Xing said helplessly and reached out to press her forehead. It's that bitch who made a fuss about observing mourning for 3 years. She forced you down the mountain and messed up the good situation. Madame of Duke Xing certainly paid attention to the prince's consort selection. Not only did she pay attention to it, but she also felt that her daughter was very likely to be selected. But she was afraid that she would be selected at this time. At this time, it was the heart of the struggle. Her daughter left before to avoid the heart of the struggle for a period of time. If she married Prince Zhou's mansion, what if Prince Yu succeeded? If she married Prince Yu, what if Prince Zhou eventually became the emperor? Of course, Xiao Yinru meant that she would not marry anyone at this time. She would rather be an old lady. Before the situation was clear, she had been living on the mountain in the name of learning painting. Others would only say that she was indifferent to fame and fortune. When other misses from aristocratic families were gorgeously dressed, she lived a quiet and inactive life alone on the mountain. Anyone would think highly of her. When the situation became clear in the future, with her reputation and wisdom as well as her relationship with Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou, it would be very easy for her to marry anyone she wanted. It did not matter if she was not the legal wife after getting married. With the strength of herself and Duke Xing's mansion, Xiao Yinru felt that it was only a matter of time before she became the empress of the next world. Even if she waited until she was 20 years old to get married, she felt that it would not be a problem. 6 years was enough to make everything clear, but now it was not the best time. She did not want to appear in front of others. If he appeared in front of people early on, he would lose that noble and mysterious feeling, and he would lose a lot of benefits in the future. She only said that she would stay on the mountain for more than half a year. If the situation was still unclear, she could stay there again. She only said that learning painting was difficult and that she needed to put more effort into it. Unexpectedly, it was ruined by Xiao Wanru, who came out of nowhere. That girl is too cunning. Mother, didn't I tell you to be careful of her? You even let the eldest miss of Qin's mansion restrain her. How could you let her recognize her as a relative peacefully? Xiao Yinru said with an unhappy look. I didn't expect that this bitch would be so cunning. I didn't pay attention to her for a while, so I was driven here by her. Madame of Duke Xing frowned and argued. Looking at his daughter's face, he felt a little guilty. Although Xiao Yinru was her daughter, after her daughter became sensible, Madame of Duke Xing always felt a little flustered when facing her daughter. Compared with her, her daughter was too sensible and capable. Even Duke Xing, who had always looked down on women, also praised his daughter. Her daughter was perfect in all aspects. No miss from an aristocratic family in the whole capital city could compare with her. Not only was she beautiful, but she also behaved appropriately. Every step was planned early. Well, a mother would also feel inferior when facing such a daughter. Xiao Yinru leaned back on the couch and said with a hint of sarcasm on her elegant face, Mother, don't quibble. You can't get away from this matter. Don't take action if you are not sure. Once you take action, you must hit the target at once, and you can't get yourself involved. Mother, I think you have been Madame of Duke Xing for a long time and even lost the basic sense of crisis. She raised her eyebrows with a hint of iciness, which made her look even more noble. This kind of aura made Madame of Duke Xing feel very stressed. The noble aura of her daughter was stronger than that of others in the palace. Only the aura of the Empress and the Empress Dowager could compare with it. Does that mean he's going to have a daughter? She would definitely strive for the last position? Thinking of this, Madame of Duke Xing felt warm in her heart and became more obedient to her daughter. This matter is indeed my fault. I thought it was just a little girl and nothing serious. I didn't expect things to change so drastically. In the end, I couldn't suppress it anymore. Your father even blamed me for burning your brother's courtyard. Even if I wanted to burn this girl to death, I would never burn your brother's courtyard. Thinking of this, Madame of Duke Xing felt that her heart still ached at this moment. If she found out who set the fire to her collection, her courtyard, and all her efforts, she would definitely not spare him. Mother, since you don't want to give up that courtyard, you shouldn't have let her live there. She has just entered the mansion, so it's normal for you to have an ordinary relationship with her. There's no need to think too much about fishing for fame. Xiao Yinru's voice was very soft and pleasant. If one didn't hear the content clearly, it would make one feel like bathing in the spring breeze. However, the content of her words hit the nail on the head and criticized Madame of Duke Xing, without showing any mercy to her as a mother. Madame of Duke Xing's face turned as red as blood and she argued, I was wrong at that time. I thought she was just a bumpkin from Jiangzhou. She's just a bumpkin. But it turns out that you were wrong. You are the bumpkin. Xiao Yinru frowned slightly and looked increasingly unhappy. Her original plan was very good and she was praised by her grandmother and father. But now it was ruined by her mother. Xiao Yinru felt that even if she had a good temper, she couldn't help being angry at this time. But, Madame of Duke Xing was embarrassed. Mother, there's no buts. If you think you can't deal with it, just tell father directly. There's no need to say so many buts to postpone it. My elder brother is coming back. If the courtyard is burned down, he will not be happy. Think about how to explain it to him. Xiao Yinru waved her hand and began to drive her away unhappily. I'll explain it to your elder brother. Your father. I can't discuss this with him. I don't know what he thinks. Maybe he will. Madame of Duke Xing said. Mother, don't explain anymore. Is it interesting to be jealous all day long? What happens to my father and that woman has nothing to do with you. Is it worth it for you to miss a crazy woman for so many years? Did she make you lose control and ruin the big plan? Mother, are you really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? Why do you have to be jealous of a crazy woman? No wonder my father likes to see you less and less now. Xiao Yinru picked up the tea on the table coldly. After taking a sip, she said with a faint smile in her eyes. Being ridiculed by her own daughter like this, Madame of Duke Xing couldn't bear it at this time no matter how well-bred she was. Xiao Yinru's words really hit her heart. You don't understand this kind of thing, and you don't have to defend your father. It's not a matter of jealousy. Mother, forget it. It won't make sense even if I explain it to you. Just tell them that I caught a cold when I came down from the mountain. Let the doctors in the mansion take a look at me, and then let the doctors outside the mansion take a look at me. Xiao Yinru became impatient and raised her eyebrows. Being ridiculed by her daughter again and again, Madame of Duke Xing felt sullen. She couldn't breathe it out, but she couldn't ignore the business at this time, so she pretended not to hear the first half of Xiao Yinru's words clearly. She calmed down and said with a hollow smile, It's okay to ask the doctor in our mansion to tell the doctor that you are sick, but I'm afraid it won't work for the doctor outside the mansion. If someone told the doctor that she was sick but was not sick at the banquet held in the palace, it would be a crime of deceiving the emperor. Although the banquet was only for the selection of concubines, and it was said that it was just a formality, it was the empress's intention anyway. If she really disobeyed the empress's intention, it could be a big or small matter. Mother, you really don't have any ideas. Find a few servant girls, pour a few basins of water on them, and let them stay for a night without changing clothes. See who is the most seriously sick, carry them to me and let the doctor have a look at them. That's it. Xiao Yinru said casually. In such a cold winter, it was cold to wear heavy clothes. If they poured a few basins of water on them and stayed for a night, they might die of illness. However, the lives of a few servant girls didn't matter. Hearing her words, Madame of Duke Xing's eyes lit up, and she immediately nodded repeatedly. Good, good, good. You have a good idea. I'll ask someone to do it now. Don't you think it's too early? Mother, the sun is still shining. When you do this kind of thing, can't you do it at night when few people see you? Xiao Yanru felt that she really couldn't continue to talk to her mother. It was totally not the same trick. No wonder she lost to a bumpkin who had just arrived in the capital and had to go down the mountain. In this way, the bumpkin was only a little better than her mother. Steamed bun was only stronger than his mother by a little or two. She didn't care about those 2 points. Ignoring Madame of Duke Xing, who was smiling, Xiao Yanru was thinking about whether she should meet Prince Yu first or Prince Zhou in private. Of course, the so-called meeting definitely didn't mean that she deliberately went to see him. She had to see him inadvertently and show her helplessness. Only by cooperating with both sides could she snatch the position of Empress in the end. She could afford to wait for 3 or 4 years. With her beauty and talent, no matter who sat on the throne of the Crown Prince's consort, they would not be her opponent. However, only by knowing yourself and your enemy could she win the final victory. She would not fight a battle that she was not sure of. After thinking it through, she sat up, stood up, and walked to the window. A servant girl had already ground the ink for her. She picked up the writing brush and thought about the names of several aristocratic misses who were likely to become Princess Yu and Princess Zhou. She wrote them down one by one, and then carefully analyzed their shortcomings and strengths. Only after understanding these could she make a plan. Chapter 476. The Grand Concubine Selection Banquet was soon over. None of the misses were chosen. Many misses went there with hope and came back disappointed. It was said that some of them cried at home and couldn't go out. Because it was said that no one suitable was chosen this time, the Empress Dowager and the Empress planned to choose a suitable one in a few years. That was to say, none of the misses of aristocratic families of the right age were chosen. The result of not being chosen was that they would miss the opportunity to marry the princes. Although 1 or 2 of them might stay, most of them had no hope and could only find another marriage partner. There were some young ladies from aristocratic families who had not been engaged until now. Of course, their target was the princes. Now, most of them could only marry someone else. Hence, after the banquet, there was a wave of engagement and intimacy. Since they knew that there was no hope, of course, they couldn't wait any longer. Most of them chose to marry someone else. Even those who didn't want to marry were forced by their families to marry someone else. The ones who stayed were the younger ones. However, some mansions deliberately waited for a while. Since the Imperial examination in spring was coming, they could afford to wait. There had always been a saying that the candidates who failed the Imperial examination would find a son-in-law. Many people had their eyes on the Imperial examination in spring. The Imperial examination in spring began in the expectation of many people, and then the results were released. Those who passed the Imperial examination were very excited, while those who failed were depressed and lamented their bad luck. The top scorer and the third runner-up were all acquaintances. Just as Xiao Wanru remembered, Qi Tianyu got the third runner-up on the day he rode on a horse to parade in the street. Xiao Wanru got the news, which made her feel anxious and listless all day. She took Yujie to Xiao Yanru's silence room. After entering the yard, she suddenly stopped when she pushed the door. "Come in." A light and elegant voice came from inside the door. Her hands silently pressed on the door. After a pause, she slowly pushed it open and waved her hand to tell Yujie not to come in. Yujie also heard who was in the silence room and relaxed. She looked at Xiao Xuanzi, who turned around the corner, walked over consciously and waited outside with Xiao Xuanzi. Chu Luchen sat lazily on the mat spread over the window, leaned against the small table on it, and said without turning his head, "Come here." There was a pot of tea and 2 teacups on the table. Both cups of tea had been poured, and the rising smoke made his handsome face more serious. It seemed that Chu Luchen in front of him was a little different. They hadn't seen each other for a while. Mingqiu Nun was now helping Chu Luchen recuperate, but she often went to Prince Chen's mansion. It was said that Prince Chen's health was getting worse, and he almost didn't go out of the mansion. In the past, he could go to the palace to see the Empress Dowager from time to time. Now, It was basically the Empress Dowager who really missed him and went to Prince Chen's mansion from the side door of the palace gate to see him. All kinds of rumors secretly said that Prince Chen might die soon. Now he was bedridden and couldn't get up. It was estimated that he didn't have much time left. At present, Prince Chen, who was said to be terminally ill and couldn't get up, was leaning against the table beside the mat at this time, looking leisurely and contented. Looking at his face, Xiao Wanru felt that although he looked sick and weak, his lips were as pale as ever, and he looked like a beautiful young man in an ink landscape painting. He was in good spirits. As for his gloomy face, she didn't know who had offended him. Xiao Wanru walked to the tea table in front of the mat and sat down. She picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. Then she slowly raised her eyes and said, "Your Highness, shouldn't you stay in the mansion to recuperate?" No matter who he wanted to confuse, since he had done so, it was naturally inconvenient for him to go out. If it fell into the eyes of someone with ulterior motives, it would be another plot. My conditions suddenly changed today, so I asked someone to carry me directly to Mingxiu. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on Xiao Wanru, and he said with a gentle smile. Xiao Wanru was wearing the black robe that she had been wearing since she entered the Yuhui nunnery. She didn't put on any makeup, and her unfashionable clothes, beautiful hair, and home-like appearance made her jade-like little face more delicate and creamy, and her clear watery eyes were like flowing spring water. She was light and elegant, with a kind of delicate charm, and there was a girl's coquettish charm in her eyes. They hadn't seen Xiao Wanru for a month, but she became more and more attractive. "Your Highness, why are you suddenly here?" Xiao Wanru asked angrily. Just now, she was in a state of depression because she heard that Qi Tianyu had won the third place again. At this time, she picked up the cup in her hand and played with it for a while, showing a bit of bitterness. Could it be that the result of the last life couldn't be changed? Qi Tianyu was still the third place, and his ranking didn't change. Could it be that she couldn't escape the tragic fate of the last life? No matter what she did, the result would be the same, right? Xiao Wanru, do you know what a woman values the most? Chu Luchen shook his sleeves and asked casually. Xiao Wanru didn't react for a moment. She stared at him with her eyes wide open and repeated, "What is the most important?" "The most important thing is a woman's virtue. Zhuozhuo won't forget that you are in the same boat with me now, right?" Chu Luchen said with a smile, and the teacup in his hand fell on the table. It was not heavy, but it inexplicably felt like colliding with gold and stone. "Your Highness, what do you mean?" Xiao Wanru didn't understand why he said such a thing, and it sounded like he was accusing her of something. "I mean, even if there was something between you and Qi Tianyu in the past, you should break it off with me now. How can my woman be intimate with another man?" Chu Liuchen's face turned cold, and the gentle smile on his face immediately disappeared, replaced by a kind of coldness and gloom. Xiao Wanru was stunned to see him change his face directly in front of her, and she even forgot the other meanings in his words. The next moment, she sensed that the stool was kicked away by Chu Luchen, and then her hand was pulled by Chu Luchen and fell down. Xiao Wanru was shocked. She hurriedly reached out, but found that the strength on her wrist was so amazing that she couldn't resist it at all. Then she fell down on the table. Chu Luchen gathered his sleeves and covered her whole body. His handsome face hung right above Xiao Wanru. He squinted his eyes slightly. From Xiao Wanru's angle, she really couldn't see his expression and what he meant. "Your Highness, what did you say? I'm not familiar with Qi Tianyu." She blinked her eyes and suddenly understood what Chu Luchen meant. She was so angry that her face turned red, and she pushed Chu Luchen hard and said, "If there was anyone in this world that Xiao Wanru didn't want to get involved with, it was Qi Tianyu. As long as she thought that Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru colluded with each other to harm her in the last life, she couldn't restrain her anger. Compared with Chu Liuchen's strength, she was not at the same level at all. Chu Luchen hung on her without moving and looked at the petite Xiao Wanru with inexplicable eyes. "Since you're not familiar with him, why are you restless for a day because he got the third rank? Do you want to go down the mountain to see him parade on the horse?" Chu Luchen reached out his hand and pushed her wrist, which had been pinched just now, to the top of her head and said with a sneer. Xiao Wanru's wrist was pinched painfully. She tried hard to break free but failed. She became furious at once and glared at Chu Luchen angrily. "Your Highness, how did you come to such a conclusion? When Qi Tianyu and I were in Jiangzhou, we were already in a life-or-death situation. How could I be happy for him getting the 3rd rank and even want to see him now? Your Highness, why don't you think that I want to kill him more now?" What she said was not harsh words, but her real thoughts. Her bright watery eyes were covered with hatred, and she stretched out her legs to kick Chu Luchen a few times. The feeling of being pinched and unable to move was just like when she was trapped in a swamp in the last life and let others plot against her fate. She was in a bad mood today. She had been thinking about Qi Tianyu and whether she would end up with her head separated from her waist in the future. With her hands pinched and her legs pressed by Chu Luchen's, she suddenly collapsed after a day of tension. She only felt that the pinch in front of her was her fate, and she could only escape if she broke free. She struggled hard with both hands and feet and stretched out her legs to kick Chu Luchen. Her mind was in a mess, and she only felt that all kinds of sporadic fragments exploded in her mind like fireworks, breaking into pieces, and in each piece, there was herself struggling in pain. "What's wrong with you?" Sensing Xiao Wanru's abnormality, Chu Luchen stretched out a hand and pressed the corner of Xiao Wanru's mouth hard. Xiao Wanru opened her mouth, bit one of his fingers hard, and bit it hard. Chu Luchen frowned in pain and flicked Xiao Wanru's lower jaw with his thumb and middle finger. Xiao Wanru felt the pain at the corner of her mouth and subconsciously loosened her mouth. She still stared at Chu Luchen with her bloody eyes, a little confused and crazy. Chu Luchen's eyes fell on her little face, which was as white as snow, and he could tell that there was something wrong with her. His slender fingers slid down from her lower jaw and fell on her slender neck. Her neck was so thin that it could almost be broken with a pinch. His fingers pinched her neck fiercely, and the sharp sense of suffocation made Xiao Wanru breathe heavily. Her body slowly softened, and her consciousness was blurred. She almost fainted. As soon as Chu Luchen loosened his grip, Xiao Wanru felt like coming back to life. Her eyes were in a mess, and she slowly gathered Chu Luchen's face. This time, there were no other fragments, only Chu Luchen. Xiao Wanru coughed hard, and the force on her arm was finally loosened. She pulled out a hand to press her chest and coughed violently, while gasping for fresh air. At that moment, she really sensed Chu Luchen's killing intent. This made her sober. The person in front of her was Prince Chen. Chapter 477. Do you want to murder me? Chu Luchen gently pressed his thin lips against Xiao Wanru's cheek and said slowly. After that, he stuck out his tongue and licked her white and tender face in an extremely gloomy voice. I didn't. Xiao Wanru's eyes became clear again. She looked at Chu Luchen breathlessly. She just wanted to break free from his restraint just now, and everything after that was almost subconscious. Seeing that the blood in Xiao Wanru's eyes had dissipated, Chu Luchen glanced at her coldly, lay down beside Xiao Wanru, and snorted, "You dare not." He reached out and half-held Xiao Wanru in his arms. "Tell me, what's the matter with Qi Tianyu? I can't ruin things because of your relationship with Qi Tianyu." Xiao Wanru closed her eyes and felt dizzy. The back of her head twitched from time to time, and she subconsciously reached out to rub it. "He has nothing to do with me. You saw it when we were in Jiangzhou. It was him and Qin Yuru who plotted against me. How could I have anything to do with him?" Xiao Wanru calmed down and explained. A big hand pressed against the back of her head and rubbed the place where she had rubbed just now. "I heard that when you were in Qin's mansion, your two families intended to unite by marriage. At that time, it was Qi Tianyu and you, right?" "That's right." Feeling that the back of her head was a little comfortable because of Chu Luchen's forceful rub, Xiao Wanru said. "It couldn't be hidden from others, especially Chu Luchen. If your two families didn't have such a bad relationship before, how could Qin Huaiyong marry you to Qi Tianyu again?" Chu Luchen's voice became gentle. Although Xiao Wanru didn't open her eyes, she knew that he should be very calm at this time. She couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. This prince really changed his attitude faster than turning the page of a book. At that time, General Qin had always thought highly of Qi Tianyu. I'm afraid that he thought Qi Tianyu was indeed a good son-in-law, so he thought so. But it was just a thought. At that time, I told Madame Shui that I was not willing to marry him. Xiao Wanru said. Since she had agreed to be Chu Liuchen's shield, she certainly wouldn't ruin his plan. As for Chu Liuchen's question, she also felt that it was reasonable. After all, she was tied to him now, and even the Empress Dowager had fallen behind. If there were some bad rumors about her, Chu Liuchen would be responsible for it in the end. No wonder the prince was so angry. Anyway, no one can decide on my marriage now. In order to comfort Chu Liuchen, Xiao Wanru deliberately added such a sentence, indicating that she would not be a burden to Chu Liuchen. In fact, Xiao Wanru felt that she had to thank Chu Liuchen. While she became Chu Liuchen's shield, her marriage was no longer arranged by Duke Xing's mansion at will. No matter what Madame of Duke Xing wanted to do and whom she wanted to marry, her marriage was not something she could interfere with. Since the Empress Dowager had registered it, the Emperor should have known about it. In addition, Duke Xing's mansion could no longer control him with his marriage because of his grandmother. This made Xiao Wanru breathe a sigh of relief in her heart. Without the control of her marriage, she would be much less passive. In this respect, Chu Liuchen was also her shield. It's good that it has nothing to do with you. I heard that Qi Tanhua is a very nostalgic person. Even though he was wronged and dumped by the current young Madame of Duke Yong, he did not speak ill of the young Madame of Duke Yong in front of others. Chu Liuchen glanced sideways at Xiao Wanru, who still closed her eyes and frowned tightly, and said in a lazy manner, "Fishing for compliments." Xiao Wanru snorted coldly and did not hide her disdain. She pursed her red lips with a bit of cold sarcasm. Speaking of fishing for compliments, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion can be regarded as a very capable one. Chu Liuchen felt satisfied and continued to massage the back of Xiao Wanru's head. Although he used force, he was very gentle. Xiao Yanru is not simple. You have to be careful. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and decided to remind Chu Liuchen. In the last life, Xiao Yanru entered the Imperial harem and became the Emperor's favorite concubine. This matter must have a direct relationship with Chu Liuchen. Although she did not know why Xiao Yanru entered the Imperial harem and became the Emperor's favorite concubine in the last life, with her character, she should want to be the princess of those princes and the Empress in the future most. Before the Empress held a banquet to choose concubines for those princes, the first Miss Xiao said that she was ill and refused to attend. It was said that she was seriously ill and even invited imperial physicians from the Imperial Palace to have a look. They all said that the first Miss Xiao was very ill. It was said that when she was in the Yuhui nunnery, she devoted herself to learning painting and did not have a good rest, so she got sick. Seeing Xiao Wanru's frown a little, Chu Liuchen put his hand down, reached out to hold her in his arms and let her head rest on his arm. Xiao Wanru wanted to stand up and push him away, but his hand was so strong that she could not push him away. She was covered with sweat and the back of her head, which had just recovered a little, had a headache again, so she simply lay down and did not move. She did not expect that such a sick and fragile person, who seemed to be so strong. Who does Xiao Yanru like? Xiao Wanru still closed her eyes and asked casually. She gave up struggling and did not dare to shake her head again, for fear that she would feel pain again. Anyone can like her, Chu Liuchen said. Xiao Wanru understood his words, but she suddenly wondered why Xiao Yanru entered the Imperial harem in the last life. Obviously, entering the Imperial harem to become the Emperor's concubine should not be considered by her. After becoming the Emperor's favorite concubine, no matter how favored she was, it was impossible for her to be the Empress. After the Empress gave birth to Prince Zhou, her status was very stable, which could not be shaken by a favorite concubine. Even if Xiao Yanru was lucky enough to give birth to a son, it was basically impossible for this son to be recognized by the Emperor and even make everyone think that this son was better than other princes. In the last life, the sixth prince, who was strangled by Xiao Yanru, was actually not born by Xiao Yanru, but by a palace maid. Later, the palace maid died in childbirth, leaving such a child, who was adopted by Xiao Yanru and raised by her. In the end, the death of the sixth prince also pushed her to the road of death. If I don't marry, they can't marry either. It's useless no matter how much they like her. Chu Liuchen said naturally. His words made Xiao Wanru silent for a while. After a long while, she asked tentatively, "Won't you choose a prince's concubine after this time?" "Not for the time being. Let's wait at least 2 or 3 years." Chu Luchun said casually. Of course, he would not want those princes to get help. Before he thought it through, he did not want them to get married with the support of the princess's concubine. "If you do this, will others find out?" Xiao Wanru said after a moment of silence. She knew that Chu Luchun had done something in this matter. Previously, the Empress Dowager and the Empress were eager to choose a concubine. Not only me, but also Prince Qing is not willing to do it. Although he doesn't marry, of course, he doesn't want others to marry. Chu Luchun twitched the corner of his mouth. Although his smile was gentle, his eyes were deep and cold. Therefore, there were many people in this matter, and each of them was extraordinary. Some were in a hurry to get married, and some deliberately sabotaged. This trap had been set long ago. It became quiet in the room. After a long while, Xiao Wanru suddenly said, "Your Highness, you can find a princess with a prominent family background. In this way, you will also have a future, won't you?" Even if other princes could not get married, Xiao Wanru believed that Chu Luchun could still marry if he wanted to. This was not a problem for him. She was really just a shield. The only function was that Chu Luchun had a confirmed princess. In the future, the Empress Dowager and the Empress did not need to bother him with this matter, but it was of no substantial help to him. Even though Xiao Wanru was no longer the former Qin Wanru, she had a strong backing. However, this so-called powerful backing was just for show. Everyone in Duke Xing's mansion disliked her very much. Everyone knew that Duke Xing's mansion would not stand behind her. They just maintained a superficial relationship with her. Even at a critical moment, this superficial relationship would be torn apart. Her maternal grandma cared about her very much. She was also noble, but she was just noble and had no real power. If Chu Luchun needed her to put in a good word for him in front of the Empress Dowager, Chu Luchun's words would be more useful in front of the Empress Dowager. From these aspects, Xiao Wanru felt that Chu Luchun still needed a princess with a real backing. "I don't need a backing. I just need a woman who doesn't hold me back." Chu Luchun reached out and patted Xiao Wanru's head. This time, he patted the place where he had massaged for her before. She immediately shrank her neck in pain, and the place seemed to ache again. This person was so bad. "With a backing, Your Highness, you can naturally do whatever you want." Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes. She didn't want to argue with him. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were both working hard to find a strong and powerful wife. Why didn't Chu Luchun find one? This was what she couldn't figure out. Obviously, he was also ambitious. No matter how weak he pretended to be, no matter how innocent he was full of ambition in Xiao Wanru's eyes. Otherwise, he could not have defeated all his opponents in the last life and reascended to the position of the crown prince of the Eastern Palace. If I want to get support, do I still have to show my sincerity? Chu Luchun reached out and patted Xiao Wanru again. It was the same place. Xiao Wanru reached out to cover the back of her head, which ached from time to time. She didn't know how she had offended Prince Qin. Of course it is necessary. Only when you and the princess are together can you get the support from the princess's family. Are there only one miss in the mansion of these misses from aristocratic families? Maybe there are other misses in their mansion who are married to my eldest brother and second brother, and they may not necessarily support me. If I expose my shortcomings, I'm afraid I won't know how I die. Chu Luchun snorted coldly. He reached out to pat the back of Xiao Wanru's head again, but this time, she had covered it. For a moment he couldn't help feeling sweet. She was a person who learned from pain. Xiao Wanru, who was pressing the back of her head, suddenly understood and nodded repeatedly. No one in the capital city was optimistic about Chu Luchun. Even if he married a noble miss, she might not be willing to marry him. Moreover, this noble miss might even expose his true strength in the end and ruin his plan. Thinking of this, it was indeed useless for him to marry a noble Mississippi. Chapter 478. You're of little use indeed, but at least you're the only granddaughter of great elder princess. Chu Luchun said naturally. What he said was really reasonable. Xiao Wanru felt speechless. She was the only granddaughter of her grandmother, and no one could compare with her benefits. At least on Great Elder Princess's side, she was irreplaceable. Although she didn't know what substantive use Great Elder Princess had for Chu Luchin. But when you mentioned it before, you didn't know that I was the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess, did you? Xiao Wanru tilted her head to look at Chu Liuchen's eyes, but he reached out to turn her head back. So she simply closed her eyes and asked curiously. At that time, she was still Qin Huaiyong's daughter. Could he say that he wanted to draw Qin Huaiyong to his side? But at that time, she was just an adopted daughter of Qin Huaiyong, and it was impossible for Qin Huaiyong to really stand behind her. I have long known that you are the granddaughter of and Great Elder Princess. Chu Luchin said gently. He reached out to pull her earlobe, which was as white as jade. Then he was surprised to see that the color of white jade was gradually dyed with pink, and he was more and more eager to play with her ear. Xiao Wanru felt speechless at his words, and reached out to slap his hand that was still touching her ear. Your Highness, you really have foresight. That's natural. When this king first saw you, I already felt that you were a good candidate. This king really didn't misjudge you. Chu Yuchen said more and more matter-of-factly. There was a hint of pride in his gentle voice, which made Xiao Wanru speechless and didn't know what to say next. Xiao Wanru reached out to slap Chu Liuchen's hand away a few more times. She felt that it was more appropriate to ask something serious. Your Highness, are you feeling better? This time, you seem to be better than before. Although she didn't feel his pulse in person, she felt that Chu Luchin was really different when they met this time, as if he had changed completely. Actually, this description wasn't quite right. On the surface, he still looked like that sickly, beautiful young man, but in reality, his heart seemed to have changed. When he was suppressing her just now, his strength was unprecedentedly great. This kind of strength didn't seem like something that a person who was about to die should have. This king's body is still not well. The hand that was playing with her earlobe suddenly dropped, as if he had no strength left. Then he coughed softly, looking extremely weak. This prince's body probably won't be able to hold on for much longer. When the time comes, remember to be a widow for this prince. At least let this prince know that there are still people thinking about this prince. His words were so infuriating that Xiao Wanru even had the impulse to hit him. This evildoer could be more evildoer. But after that he felt a deep sorrow. He was the pride of the heavens and should have been high and mighty. But now he was despised by everyone. The so-called sincerity, indeed, how many people treated him sincerely? She couldn't help but look sideways at Chu Luchin. This time, Chu Luchin didn't push her head back. She looked sideways and saw the handsome young man lying quietly beside her. His face was pale, his lips were pale, and even his breathing was pale. His long eyelashes were uneven on his pale eyes. He was very beautiful and out of this world. This kind of appearance should not appear in the secular world. Perhaps only the beautiful young men in books and paintings could compare with him. He was pale and weak, especially when his eyes were closed and he looked completely harmless. Even though she knew that he was actually a black-hearted person, at this time, she inexplicably felt sorry for the beautiful young man with his eyes closed in front of her. Perhaps when she died in her previous life, she was older than Chu Luchin now. At this time, when she saw Chu Luchin, who was as beautiful as coming out of a painting, and thought about the meaning of his words just now, she inexplicably felt a little pity for him. She involuntarily reached out her hand and gently touched his handsome cheek. The feeling that he closed his eyes and stopped breathing was really sad and uncomfortable. However, her hand was held tightly by a big hand on his cheek. Then, she saw Chu Luchin let go of her hand with a little confusion and reached out to press his forehead. What he did just now was a subconscious action. Whenever someone approached him, he would have such a reaction. Moreover, he would always be able to sense it early. However, this time, he only realized it when it was about to touch his face. He was really too slow. All of a sudden, the room became quiet. Only the two people's light breathing could be heard. Xiao Wanru felt uncomfortable and wanted to explain something. But when she saw Chu Luchin turn his head to one side and continue to close his eyes, she inexplicably felt that she did not know what to say. Since he did not ask, she simply turned her head to one side again and closed her eyes to think about the current situation carefully. Being disturbed by Chu Luchen, the depression in her heart dissipated. After calming down, she closed her eyes and thought about it. Although Qi Tianyu still got the third place in the Imperial examination, many things were completely different from the last life. In the last life, at this time, Qin Yuru had replaced her and become the nominal granddaughter of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, and she was very fond of her. Because she deliberately said that she was 2 years younger than Qin Yuru, her marriage was postponed. At this time, it was far from the time when she got married. But now, she got married with a bad reputation. In the last life, Qin Yuru was very proud. With Duke Xing's mansion as her back, Ningyuan Army General's mansion, and Duke Yong's mansion was her uncle's family. Madame D controlled the internal affairs of Ningyuan Army General's mansion, and all the bad reputation fell on her. Qin Yuru could be said to have a smooth life. The reason why Ru and Great Elder Princess's mansion did not support her in the last life should be that her maternal grandmother thought that Qin Yuru could not be her biological granddaughter. Although she did not know the reason, her maternal grandmother had always been strong and would do whatever she thought. If she thought that it was not, she would not support Qin Yuru. In this life, even if Qin Yuru married into Duke Yong's mansion, she would not have a good life. She had asked Shui Rulin about what happened that day in private. It was obvious that Qin Yuru had plotted against Di Yen, so that he had to marry her quickly. Originally, she wanted to break off the engagement, and Qin Huaiyong also agreed. She happily came to get rid of this burden, but in the end she had to marry Qin Yuru quickly. Everyone would know that she had been plotted against. But this plot made Di Yen suffer in silence. In addition, Qin Yuru had made a lot of noise at that time. If he did not marry her, it would make a big scandal. He had to marry Qin Yuru no matter what. The consequence was that Qin Yuru could marry into Duke Yong's mansion, but she would not have a good life. Even if old Madam of Duke Yong's mansion protected Qin Yuru, she could not live as well as she did in the last life. Countess Yong had always disliked Qin Yuru. In the last life, Di Yen and Qin Yuru were a couple in front of others. Because of Qin Yuru's background, Di Yen did not dare to be too excessive to Qin Yuru. Even if he had an affair with Ning Kaixian, it was done secretly. Later, when he could not hide it, it was revealed. But at least in the beginning, Di Yen sincerely asked to marry Qin Yuru. It was different in this life. With Di Yan's temperament, he married Qin Yuru unwillingly, and Qin Yuru's reputation was so bad. How could Di Yen, who came back after being ridiculed by others, calm down? Qin Yuru was not willing to suffer losses. The whole Duke Yong's mansion could not be peaceful. The direction of this life was completely different from that of the last life. Even if there were some coincidences, it did not affect the overall situation. Thinking of this, she felt more relaxed. She had been obsessed before. She pinched her hand hard and clearly felt a trace of pain in her hand. She also clearly realized that she was different from before. In this life, she would advance step by step. She would not follow the old path of the last life, and she would not be wronged and die hopelessly. Hey, what's wrong with you? You secretly touched me and then fell asleep contentedly. What's wrong with you? Xiao Wanru was shaken by something. She opened her watery eyes and looked at the sky blankly. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Xiao Wanru, you won't abandon me after making use of me, will you? The soft voice in her ear was a little disdainful. Xiao Wanru turned her head blankly and met Chu Liuchen's handsome eyes. He supported his head with one hand and looked at Xiao Wanru with the other, his eyes full of disdain and accusation. She touched her head subconsciously and found that the arm under her pillow was gone. Oh, she didn't know when he took his hand away. Then she said that she fell asleep thinking about it just now? Seeing that Xiao Wanru's face changed from confusion to surprise, and even saw her little face leave a small red mark on the jade slip on his arm, Chu Luchen inexplicably felt that it was funny. This girl was really muddle-headed, but she looked pitiful and ridiculous. He reached out his hand and touched her pink little face naturally. You touched me secretly just now. I want to take back the principal now. Will there be interest in the future? Interest? Xiao Wanru, who had just woken up, was a little confused. She subconsciously repeated and looked at Chu Luchan with a pair of misty eyes. Of course there must be interest. Who is this king? Is this king's face something that can be touched so easily? Since you touched my face, of course, I have to touch you back. Haven't you heard of paying a debt? Chu Luchan said indifferently. The little red mark on his face was really ridiculous. She looked silly and stupid, completely. She wasn't as clever as she used to be. This doesn't seem right. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes again and inexplicably felt that there was something wrong with his words. What's wrong? Just like if you owe me a meal, will you treat me the next time you see me? Chu Luchan blamed her innocently. Xiao Wanru nodded and felt that his words made sense. But I invited you first. If you are more polite, will you invite me again? This is the interest. Chu Luchan said effortlessly. It seemed to make sense. Xiao Wanru nodded, but then shook her head, feeling a little confused. Let's go. I'll take you to see someone. Chu Luchan sat up with a laugh, pulled Xiao Wanru up, patted her head and said, I'll meditate in silence. Xiao Wanru's consciousness finally returned. She pulled Chu Luchan's sleeve and said, I didn't ask you to leave Yue Nunnery because I want to see someone who comes to see you. Chu Luchan let go of Xiao Wanru's hand with an elegant and free smile, walked to the door, and told Xiao Xuanzi, who was guarding outside the door, prepare a bamboo curtain. Yes, I'll prepare it right away. Xiao Xuanzi answered with a smile. He winked at Yujie, who was beside him, and ran away with a smile. When there was no movement in the room just now, Yujie was startled and wanted to rush in, but was stopped by him. Chapter 479. Qi Tianyu had rushed here in a hurry. He had already changed his clothes from the third flower prince's uniform. Now he was wearing a plain green gown, which was also very ordinary. It was hard to believe that he was the handsome Tanhua who had been chased by thousands of girls in the capital city just a moment ago. Now he was just an ordinary pilgrim in the Yue Nunnery, who asked to see the fifth Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion. He said that he was an old friend. The Yue Nunnery asked a nun to report it to Xiao Wanru. Hearing that Xiao Wanru went to the silence room, she went to the silence room to report it. After Yujie went in to report it, she came out and said a few words to the nun. The nun nodded and went back. After a while, she led Qi Tianyu, who looked handsome in cyan, over. Yujie had been waiting in front of the courtyard. Seeing Qi Tianyu coming over, she stepped forward and bowed. First young master of the Qi family, my miss is still painting in the silence room. She hasn't finished painting yet. It doesn't matter. I'll wait for a while. Qi Tianyu said gently and stepped into the courtyard. One side of the courtyard faced the mountains. Even standing in the courtyard, one could still appreciate the mountains outside. It was already early spring. Perhaps there was only the faint scent of winter at the foot of the mountain, but one could faintly see the intertwining of the mountains on the mountain. There were dyed cyan mountains, black and brown stones, and from time to time, there were clusters of flowers dotting the mountains. The scenery was extremely beautiful. Qi Baiyu seemed to be stunned. He just stood in the yard quietly and looked at the mountains. He had been looking at them for more than an hour. During this time, he just moved a little bit. It seemed that he was very patient. After a long while, Yujie heard a slight sound coming from the door of the silence room. She hurriedly went in to have a look. Qi Tianyu seemed to have heard nothing. He was still quietly appreciating the scenery with his hands behind his back, without any intention of peeping. First young master of the Qi family, my miss, please. Yujie came out and said to Qi Tianyu. Qi Tianyu nodded and turned to the silence room with a calm face. The door of the quiet room was already open. Qi Tianyu slowly walked in and saw a mat facing the door. Behind the mat was a bamboo curtain, blocking the window behind it. The room was not as bright as he had imagined. Fortunately, the window in the front was also open, so it did not seem particularly dark. There was a small table on the mat, and Xiao Wanru was kneeling on a rush cushion on it with a calm face. She was dressed in plain black clothes and had no other jewelry except for a hairpin. Hearing the sound at the door, she raised her beautiful eyes, which were calm and elegant like water and sparkling. The dim quiet room immediately became lively because of her raising her eyes. Seeing this, Qi Tianyu stopped for a moment, but then he stood up and walked over slowly. Yu Jie took a round stool from the side, but she didn't put it on the mat where Xiao Wanru was sitting. Instead, she put it in the middle of the room, facing Xiao Wanru. Then she moved a table that matched the round stool, served tea, and retreated to Xiao Wanru's side. "Fifth Miss Xiao?" Qi Tianyu looked Xiao Wanru up and down and said slowly with cupped hands. It was the first time for Xiao Wanru to meet Qi Tianyu after she returned to the clan. "First young master of the Qi family, please sit down," Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Qi Tianyu didn't stand on ceremony anymore. He turned around and sat down on the stool on one side. "First young master of the Qi family, why do you come up the mountain this time?" Xiao Wanru asked. "I heard from my sister that a lot of things happened to you. I wanted to come to see you before. On the one hand, it was inconvenient for you to come here just now. On the other hand, I couldn't spare time to help you at that time," Qi Tianyu said in a gentle voice. Qi Tianyu said gently. Although he looked calm, there was a hint of concern in his voice. He had been parading in the street on horseback, but now he appeared on the mountain, which showed his eagerness. From this aspect, it seemed that he really meant something. His words were sincere and didn't sound too ambiguous. There was only a hint of cordial concern in his voice, which was neither too far nor too close, which made people feel good about him. Behind the bamboo curtain, Chu Luchen lay back with a faint smile on his face. He reached out to pull the belt of Xiao Wanru's black robe in front of him and played with it in his hand. The bamboo curtain happened to block him inside, and the window behind him was closed. That area looked dim. Qi Tianyu didn't expect that there was not only Qin Wanru in the silence room, but also a malignant star. "First young master of the Qi family, thank you for your concern. I'm fine now," Xiao Wanru said indifferently with her watery eyes slightly raised, without any emotion. "Our families are good friends, and the children of the two families grew up together. It has nothing to do with the change of other identities. If you need any help, I will try my best. I didn't have any ability before, but I will gradually become capable in the future." Qi Tianyu's voice became gentler and a little guilty. Qi Tianyu stood up and bowed deeply to Xiao Wanru. "As for what happened in Jiangzhou, I was evil at that time. I always wanted to make a clear apology to you, but I never had a chance. I was always afraid that I was not sincere enough. At that time, I was also angry, so I said those hurtful words to you. I'm really sorry." He didn't mean to defend himself at all. "First young master of the Qi family, you are too polite. Let bygones be bygones. It's useless to talk about it now." Xiao Wanru looked more and more gentle. "First young master of the Qi family, please sit down. Now Qin Yuru has become the young madam of Duke Yong. Let bygones be bygones." Everyone could say generous words, and Xiao Wanru thought that she was not bad. If she didn't have the memory of the last life, she would probably be deceived by Qi Tianyu and think that he had really forgotten what had happened before and apologized to her sincerely. Qi Tianyu was the epitome of selfish and headstrong. In the last life, Qi Tianyu almost ruined her chastity. At that time, when he was drunk, his words rang in her ears. He said that he would never forget the humiliation she gave him and that he must ruin her in order to wash away his humiliation. He was the most honorable child in Jiangzhou, but he had to leave because of her. The hatred from his bones almost drowned Xiao Wanru. Fortunately, Qin Yu came in and found Qi Tianyu. She picked up the teapot on the table and smashed it on Qi Tianyu. After that, she shouted and asked someone to come in. Even so, the person sent by Madame D scolded Xiao Wanru severely. He scolded her for making a fuss and deliberately seducing Qi Baiyu. Xiao Wanru still remembered the vicious look of the person who wanted to pour all the dirty water in the world on Xiao Wanru. What impressed her even more was that Qin Yu was beaten so hard that her leg was almost broken. Fortunately, she found a kind doctor who saved Qin Yu with a lot of good medicine and didn't pay much for the treatment. Speaking of it, it's all my fault. Sister Wanru is a young girl, but I, a man, couldn't help losing my temper and blamed you like that. It's all my fault. I hope you can forgive me." Qi Tianyu bowed deeply again and his face was full of deep self-blame. There was a hint of intimacy in his words. When they were in Jiangzhou, they did call each other like that. But now it sounded like a lifetime ago, and it was indeed a lifetime ago. Child Qi, you are too polite. Please sit down. Child Qi, please don't call me the old way. Even if I am still the second miss of Qin's mansion, it is not appropriate to call me this way. What's more, I am not the daughter of Qin's mansion yet. Although Xiao Wanru's voice was soft, it was cold and distant. She raised her watery eyes, which were still calm. There was still a little childishness on her face, but it didn't make her look innocent and ignorant. Instead, it seemed that she had seen through everything. Qi Tianyu couldn't figure out Xiao Wanru's current state. Could it be that she was really so calm? Or was it because of what happened in Jiangzhou that she had been estranged from him? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. Since he came to the capital city, he had been making up for it. Even Qin Huaiyong could forgive him and almost arrange the marriage between him and Xiao Wanru. It was impossible for an 11 or 12-year-old girl to see anything. At this time, Qi Tianyu also regretted it. If he had worked harder to persuade Qin Huaiyong to agree to let Xiao Wanru marry him, he would have two powerful in-laws at this time. At that time, he didn't have many scruples. He didn't work hard on Qin Huaiyong or show off in front of Xiao Wanru, so he missed an excellent opportunity. Fortunately, it was not over now. Xiao Wanru couldn't live in Duke Xing's mansion anymore, so she came to Yuhui Nunnery. At this time, he was probably the only one who could come to see her. He deliberately chose this time to come here to let Xiao Wanru see clearly how much he missed her. After changing his clothes, he went up the mountain directly. First young master of the Qi family, please sit down. Seeing him still standing aside, Xiao Wanru reached out slightly to beckon him. Qi Tianyu had no choice but to sit down again and said with a smile, I was anxious just now and called you the wrong way. I didn't expect that things remain the same, but people have changed now. Fifth Miss Xiao, please forgive me. Putting away the nostalgia on his face, Qi Tianyu's face became more gentle and elegant. He had an outstanding appearance and had a good reputation as a handsome man in Jiangzhou. At this time, his expression and behavior were all typical, and no one could find any fault with him. He thought that he was also elegant, and it was only a matter of time before he could win Xiao Wanru's heart. Moreover, he had always felt that Xiao Wanru had feelings for him. However, at that time, it was because of Qin Yuru. Now Qin Yuru was Qin Yuru, and Xiao Wanru was Xiao Wanru. They no longer had a relationship, so it didn't matter even if he continued his relationship with Xiao Wanru. Fifth Miss Xiao, do you want to go out for a walk? I heard that the scenery in Yuhui Nunnery is good. Can you accompany me to have a look? Qi Tianyu showed a very appropriate and gentle expression, which he thought was very appropriate. He looked at Xiao Wanru with a pair of handsome eyes seemingly full of affection. He didn't say something, but his reluctant look showed that he was more affectionate. It's my first time in Yuhui Nunnery, and I haven't been to many places. If first young master of the Qi family is interested, you can ask the reception monk to lead the way. Xiao Wanru's long and curly eyelashes fluttered twice, and then she refused when a faint complacent expression appeared on Qi Tianyu's face. The complacent smile froze on his face, and Qi Tianyu reacted quickly and explained, no matter where we go, I just want to take a walk. No matter where we go, it's not suitable. First young master of the Qi family, please. I still need to paint, so I can't accompany you. Chapter 480. Then I won't disturb you, Fifth Miss Xiao. I still have something to deal with and have to go down the mountain. I'll come to see you next time. Qi Tianyu stood up and said to Xiao Wanru with a smile, as if he didn't know that Xiao Wanru's previous words were to refuse him. Yu Jie, see first young master Qi out. Xiao Wanru answered lightly without raising her head. Qi Tianyu felt very uncomfortable in her casual and cold manner, and he almost failed to keep the warm and elegant smile on his face. He suppressed the anger in his heart and didn't pester her anymore. He turned around and followed Yu Jie out. When he arrived at the yard, he stopped, looked at Yu Jie and said, How is your miss doing after coming up the mountain? I heard that she was frightened in Duke Xing's mansion. Thank you, first young master Qi. My miss is fine. She has always lived a luxurious life and has nothing to eat and use on the mountain. If you need anything, you can come to me and I will prepare it for your Mississippi, Chi Tianyu said attentively. If others heard it, they would definitely think that he had a special relationship with Xiao Wanru. Yu Jie's face turned cold. She reached out to the door and said, "First young Master Qi, please stop talking. My miss has nothing to do with you. It's not a big deal to trouble you. First young Master Qi, please leave." As a servant girl, Yu Jie was educated differently from ordinary servant girls when she was young. There were some things that other servant girls didn't dare to say, but she said it without any burden. She was very straightforward to drive him away. Chi Tianyu didn't expect that a servant girl dared to talk to him like this. He was so angry that his face changed. However, looking at the slightly open door of the quiet room, he immediately suppressed the anger in his heart and even forced a bitter smile on his face. "I have nothing to do with your miss now, but after all, we grew up together. I can't just watch her. Well, I won't say more. If you have any difficulties, just come to me." After saying that, he turned around and walked out before Yu Jie could say anything unpleasant. His words were not meant for a servant girl who knew nothing. What he intended to say was naturally Xiao Wanru, who was in the slightly open door. These words were so sincere that he didn't believe that Xiao Wanru wouldn't be moved at all. He couldn't be in a hurry and had to take it slowly. It didn't matter if she had a knot in her heart. Chi Tianyu was very confident about this. In the beginning, the Qin sisters were interested in him. However, the younger sister was still a child, so it was impossible for him to have any feelings for a child. But now, he found that the child had grown into a beautiful girl. He could control Qin Yuru, so he could control with Xiao Wanru. He only thought that Xiao Wanru was still a child at that time, so he didn't like her. However, he didn't think that since she was just a child, how could she have adult thoughts about him? He was just a kind brother next door. Xiao Wanru. T with Yenru Xiao. With Xiao with. Tt Xiao Yenru with Yen. With Xiao with shout. The bamboo curtain was violently pulled down by him. Xiao Wanru was startled, and the painting in her hand fell to the ground. She looked up at Chu Liuchen's handsome and elegant face in astonishment, and then looked at the painting on the ground. She picked it up helplessly and said, "Your Highness, this painting belongs to Xiao Yenru. It's extremely rare. It was found by Chu Liuchen and he asked Xiao Xuanzi to bring it here. It's not rare at all. We can find it again." Chu Liuchen casually reached out to pull Xiao Wanru's silk ribbon. Xiao Wanru hurriedly reached out to pull it. Although the silk ribbon was used as a decoration on her coat, it would be very ugly if it was pulled off by him. "Your Highness, the ribbon is going to break. Chi Tianyu looks very different today. Did you put powder on your face?" Chu Liuchen suddenly asked. Xiao Wanru blinked and shook her head in confusion. "I didn't pay attention to it." When she came in, she glanced at Chi Tianyu and then didn't look at him directly. For the dignity of the royal family, some people put some powder on their faces. Judging from Chi Tianyu's appearance, I know he is the kind of person who put powder on his face. He even came to the Yuhui nunnery with powder. Does he want to hook up with nuns in the Yuhui nunnery? Chu Liuchen pulled the silk ribbon in his hand again. "Your Highness, you can go back now. If you come out for a long time, you will be discovered," Xiao Wanru said helplessly. "Let's go and see whether he put powder on his face or not." Chu Liuchen stood up and reached out to pull Xiao Wanru up. Then he took her out of the quiet room. When they walked out of the courtyard, Xiao Xuanzi had already come out from a secluded place. He reached out to point in a direction with a complacent smile. He had expected that his master would not let this new Tanhua man go down the mountain so easily. The road over there was a little mysterious, so he led him to walk there. Chu Liuchen took Xiao Wanru's hand with interest and followed Xiao Xuanzi down the mountain. After walking for a while, they saw the same mountain wall in front of them and walked around it. The Yuhui nunnery was on the mountain, and there were many mountain roads that stretched out diagonally. Chu Liuchen took Xiao Wanru up a mountain road that was inclined upward. There was a big stone at the top of the mountain road, and there were a few pine trees beside it. Chu Liuchen took Xiao Wanru to stand beside the big stone and looked down. From a distance, he saw Chi Tianyu still taking a detour on the mountain road below. Xiao Xuanzi left. In fact, the mountain road here was not only mysterious, but also not easy to get out. They had been here for a while, but Chi Tianyu had not taken a detour through the mountain forest. At this time, he had to stand in a stream and think carefully about which angle was the best to get out. He believed that his knowledge was extraordinary. He knew a little about some of the more obscure formations, so it was impossible for him to really be trapped. This was also the reason why he was walking around and was confident that he could get out of this place. However, after being trapped for so long, he thought about it carefully and felt that there was no need to force himself. He could just go back. Even if he was seen by Xiao Wanru's servant girl named Yu Jie, so what? With that in mind, he wanted to turn around, but before he could do so, a black shadow flashed before his eyes. His body was pushed heavily and he staggered a few times. He used all his strength to pull on a rock at the side, trying to stabilize his body. Who would have thought that the rock under his feet had been wet for years, and there was some slippery moss growing on it? How could it withstand his weight? With a plop, he fell heavily into the stream and then slid a few times before sitting directly in the water. The stream was not deep, and the water was clear enough to illuminate one's reflection. However, the way he fell down, his robe was completely soaked. The splashing water drenched him from head to toe. Not only his robe, but his entire body was drenched. Xiao Wanru couldn't help showing a smile on her face. She really wanted to see Chi Tianyu in such a mess. The new Tanhua ranker didn't stay in his own mansion but went to the nunnery and even wet himself. It was really shameful. Think about what he will say when he goes back. Chu Luchen proudly pinched Xiao Wanru's little hand and played with her delicate fingers this time. What will he say? Xiao Wanru asked curiously. He will naturally say that he went up the mountain to enjoy the scenery and worship Buddha and accidentally fell off the cliff. Chu Luchen said with a smile. Well, he won't talk about me, will he? Xiao Wanru glanced at Chi Tianyu, who was trying to get up. After thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was very likely that Chi Tianyu was trying to show his kindness to her now. In the last life, Chi Tianyu and Qin Yuru tried hard to ruin her. She was still the same person. The difference between her and the last life was that she had a good reputation now and her identity had changed. Chi Tianyu's attitude towards her in this life was very different from that in the last life. She silently raised the corner of her mouth and showed a sarcastic smile. Chi Tianyu wanted something from her, so he suppressed the resentment in his heart. No! Chu Luchen said. Xiao Wanru widened her eyes and looked at Chu Yuchen, showing her surprise with her eyes. He dare not. Chu Luchen smiled and reached out to pull her hand, motioning her to look down. A guard in black appeared by the stream and pulled up Chi Tianyu, who was embarrassed. After looking him up and down, he said coldly, "Stay away from our miss in the future. Our princess asked our miss to come up the mountain to observe mourning for our miss and son-in-law. She didn't want anyone to disturb her peace. If you ruin our miss's reputation, the princess will not let you go." The guard put his hands on his waist and said loudly with a fierce look. It was obvious that he was not an easy person to get along with. As the mountain wind blew, Chi Tianyu was so cold that he could only shiver, but his mind was clear. He immediately realized that the guard in front of him should be and great elder princess's man. He immediately became respectful and said, "Brother guard, don't worry. I will never get Sister Wanru involved in this matter. Please report it to Great Elder Princess." After saying that, he forced himself to turn around and leave. Although he was cold all over, he seemed to have a strong character. Only Chu Luchen, who was on the mountain, laughed silently and couldn't stop for a while. Seeing Chi Tianyu leave along the way, Xiao Wanru went back and pulled Chu Liuchen's sleeve, saying, "Your Highness, we can go back. The show is over." With the words, "Great Elder Princess's guard," Chi Tianyu didn't dare to say anything. It saved her a lot of trouble. She was extremely unwilling to get involved with Chi Tianyu again. "If he dares to do anything to you next time, I will kill him." After laughing, Chu Liuchen's face darkened. He looked in the direction where Chi Tianyu left, and his handsome eyes immediately became cold and ruthless. Xiao Wanru speechlessly watched him change his face again, from a cute boy who couldn't stop laughing to a cold and gloomy king of Azura. Chu Luchun definitely deserved the title of King of 1,000 Faces. Let's go up and have a look. Chu Luchun raised his eyes to look at another path diagonally upward, and the look on his face immediately became full of meaning. Chapter 481. We can see more from the top. Chu Luchun looked up at the top and said excitedly, "It's more tiring to climb from the top. Prince, you'd better take good care of yourself before coming back." Xiao Wenru said. She reached out to hold his hand and walked down the mountain directly. Although Chu Liuchun's health was better than last time, he was still worse than ordinary people. She had asked Mingqiu Nun clearly. It was not so easy to treat the fetal poison at birth. Moreover, after so many years, Chu Luchun had not been cured. It was said that he did not care about his health at all. This made Xiao Wenru feel a little sad inexplicably. If someone did not care about his own health, what would he care about? Being dragged by Xiao Wenru so strongly, Chu Luchun looked a little embarrassed and reluctantly pulled Xiao Wenru with his hand. Seeing that she ignored him, he had to follow her down the mountain. Xiao Xuanzi had also climbed up at some point. He was timidly trying to persuade Chu Luchun to go down the mountain to take medicine. Seeing the scene in front of him, he was very happy. In the past, no one could persuade his master to do something he was unwilling to do. Even the Empress Dowager had no way to persuade him. His master had plenty of ways to persuade the Empress Dowager in the end. Now with 5th Miss Xiao, it was really different. In the future, his master could really be saved. Dr. Qi had said more than once that his master should pay attention to his own health and not take medicine intermittently. Otherwise, his body would really not recover and he would not live for long. Now it was all good. Xiao Xuanzi happily followed the two of them down the mountain. The following days were very peaceful. It was so peaceful that Xiao Wenru almost forgot that Duke Xing's mansion was behind her. After living on the mountain for a period of time, Chu Luchun went down the mountain. After that, he had been recuperating in Prince Chen's mansion and did not appear in Yuhui Nunnery much. No one knew that he secretly went to Yuhui Nunnery. And Great Elder Princess and Xiao Yuanhao went up the mountain to see Xiao Wenru from time to time. With Ru and Great Elder Princess's support, the nuns in Yuhui Nunnery did not dare to treat Xiao Wenru badly. Shui Rulin gave birth to a son named Qin Xian, who was called Brother Xian. When Brother Xian grew up a little, Shui Rulin and old Madame Qin also took Brother Xian up the mountain to visit Xiao Wenru. Xiao Wenru lived a very peaceful life on the mountain. She liked painting, so she used Xiao Yenru's silence room, which was very peaceful. She spent most of her time here. Seeing that she really liked this courtyard, Ru and Great Elder Princess discussed with the abbess of Yuhui Nunnery and donated a lot of money for incense oil to let Xiao Wenru use this courtyard. Apart from the main house in the middle, she could enter the other places and rest there when she was tired. Because there were some personal belongings such as Xiao Yenru's clothes in the main room, it was inconvenient for Xiao Wenru to enter. Originally, the abbess of Yuhui Nunnery would not agree to this kind of thing. However, on the one hand, it was Ru and Great Elder Princess who came forward. On the other hand, although the courtyard belonged to Xiao Yenru, it was Duke Xing's mansion who sent people to renovate it. Besides, Xiao Wenru was Xiao Yenru's cousin and also a member of Duke Xing's mansion. Based on these two opinions and the agreement of Master Pushun, Yuhui Nunnery had a very peaceful life. Xiao Wenru lived a very pure life in the Yuhui Nunnery. Except for these two courtyards, she basically didn't go anywhere else. After that, when Zhang Qilan came to the Yuhui Nunnery to cultivate in seclusion, she also lived a peaceful life with her for a period of time. Zhang Qilan also liked painting. She accompanied Xiao Wenru for a few months before reluctantly leaving the mountain. There was no time in the mountain, and the capital city at the foot of the mountain was very peaceful. The princes didn't get married for the time being, so no one wanted to get married. There was nothing to compete for. Gradually, some women who had been famous for their talent and beauty faded out of the public sight. After getting married, of course, they couldn't be in the limelight as they used to be when they were girls. However, some women were still talked about enthusiastically in the circle of aristocratic families in the capital city. For example, The first miss of Duke Xing's mansion saved a fainted old woman on Wenxin Road in Huaguang Temple. Not only did she not dislike others, but she also slowly helped the old woman up with her servant girl. It could be said that she was kind and dignified. She was famous for her talent and beautiful appearance. Although she was said to be the most beautiful woman in the capital city before, she was not very old at that time. Now she was 16 years old and was in the prime of her life. It was said that when they saw the first Miss Xiao helping the old woman up that day, all the people on Wenxin Road were stunned. It was said that she was a fairy descending to the mortal world. This time, the title of the most beautiful woman in the capital city firmly fell on Xiao Yanru. A busybody deliberately wrote a poem, "There is a woman who is beautiful and kind," which shocked the whole capital city for a time. The first Miss Xiao's beauty became more and more well-known, and she was faintly said to be the most beautiful woman in Dongcang Kingdom. It was said that the first Miss Xiao was also very good at painting, which was taught by Pushun Nun of Yuhui Nunnery. Pushun Nun was originally from a painting master, but later she became a nun because of an accident. It could be said that she had a profound family background, and all her painting skills were passed on to Xiao Yanru. Pushun Nun also once said that Xiao Yanru was very talented, and willing to work hard. If she could stay on the mountain for another 2 years, she might have been a master now. Once the saying was spread, it immediately made people dislike the fifth Miss Xiao, who was still on the mountain now. It was said that if the fifth Miss Xiao, who was not liked by everyone in Duke Xing's mansion, had not made a fuss about going to Yuhui Nunnery to observe mourning, the first Miss Xiao would not have given her courtyard and had to go down the mountain. After more than 2 years, what had happened in the past was not so clear. Everyone only saw Xiao Yanru's elegance, Xiao Yanru's kindness, and Xiao Yanru's talent. They had long forgotten that Duke Xing's mansion forced the newly recognized fifth Miss Xiao to go to Yuhui Nunnery. Bored, Chu Liuxin stretched out his foot and kicked a few bamboos on the side. It was already autumn, but the bamboos still looked very green, which made him feel a little better. He raised his eyes and looked through the bamboos at several misses from aristocratic families on the other road. He immediately became depressed and inexplicably unhappy. He didn't want to get married yet. Why should he choose someone? This kind of thing had been annoying him recently. 2 years ago, when he said that he would not choose a consort, he was happy for a long time. Now he also felt that he was still young. He was just the age of his brothers 2 years ago. Why did they say that they were too young to choose a consort at that time? Now, they had not chosen a consort when they were so old, and it was his turn again. "Your Highness, do you like someone?" The little eunuch Xiao Liuzi, lowered his voice and asked excitedly. They came to see secretly, so of course, they couldn't let the misses in front of them know. "No." Chu Liuxin squatted down, took a broken bamboo branch, and casually drew a few lines on the ground, feeling very annoyed. "Master, if you don't like it, next time you tell the Empress Dowager and ask her to invite more people out." Eunuch Xiao Liuzi also squatted beside him and tried to flatter him. "None of them are good-looking and I don't like them. Don't choose any more. I'm still young." Chu Liuxin angrily poked holes in the ground with the bamboo branch in his hand. He couldn't help it. Of course, he understood what his mother meant. She wanted him to choose a good person early. When it was about time, his mother would go to the Empress Dowager and beg. At that time, he could ask for the Imperial grandmother's decree and directly give the order to grant him a marriage. But the problem was that he didn't want to get married at all. He didn't want to choose a consort at all. He felt that he could still play for a few more years. It was not too old to play for another 2 or 3 years. There were many people in the royal family who got married at around 20 years old. Why should he get married at such a good age when he was only 15 years old? "Your Highness, if you don't choose, Consort Ming will be angry. At that time, she may choose for you directly." Eunuch Xiao Liuzi tried to persuade him with a sad face. At that time, not only would His Highness suffer, but he would also be beaten with him. Thinking of this, Eunuch Xiao Liuzi felt his butt hurt. After fooling around with His Highness, Consort Ming beat him up. If His Highness hadn't been pleading for him, he would still be lying in bed. He didn't want to be beaten by Consort Ming again. His buttocks couldn't be beaten anymore. The prince could only try to persuade him. He didn't understand why the prince didn't take a fancy to any of these young ladies who looked so pretty and cute. Could it be that the prince had taken a fancy to the number one beauty? But it was said that the two princes also liked the first beauty. This was really difficult. I'm still young. Chu Liuxin was silent for a moment. Then he thrust the bamboo branch in his hand directly into the ground. He stood up, clapped his hands, and sighed helplessly. Tell me that you don't like these ladies and give me a few more. At least he didn't say that he didn't want to choose. He would delay it as long as possible. Chu Liuxin walked forward casually. This road was different from the one the ladies had taken just now. It was more remote and quieter. The mountain path was winding and not easy to walk on. Looking from afar, there was no place to rest. Master, since you don't like them, let's go back. Eunuch Xiao Liuzi looked at the winding path and suggested with a smile on his face. As long as His Highness said that he still wanted to choose, he wouldn't be beaten by Consort Ming. Let's go up and have a look. Chu Liuxin suddenly became persistent and strode up. Your Highness, if we go up, we may not see her. Let's go. Eunuch Xiao Liuzi wanted to reach out and pull him, but Chu Liuxin walked up quickly. He couldn't pull him back, so he could only follow behind and whisper. What are you whispering about? Come up quickly. Chu Liuxin waved his hand unhappily and said, Yes, I'll come right away. Your Highness, please slow down. Be careful not to fall. Eunuch Xiao Liuzi said helplessly and quickly followed him. Looking at the winding path above, he sighed in his heart. He knew that his master would not give up. Since 5th Miss Xiao entered Yuhui Nunnery, his master would definitely come to Yuhui Nunnery if something happened. Now, even the consort selection was done here. How ridiculous it was to have a blind date in a nunnery. However, His Highness still talked nonsense in front of Consort Ming. He said that if there was fate, Buddha would be the one who could come to a conclusion. Buddha would definitely see more clearly. As for why it was put in a nunnery instead of a temple, of course, it was because he was afraid that the ladies who were chosen would be offended. Although there were also men who performed rituals in Yuhui Nunnery, there were much fewer of them than in temples, so it was much quieter. Seeing that His Highness talked nonsense in front of Consort Ming but made her nod repeatedly, Eunuch Xiao Liuzi, as a sensible person, felt really bitter in his heart. He felt that he was the only one who knew the secret that others didn't know, but he couldn't say it out loud. He was really sullen. Chapter 482. Miss, Madam of Duke Xing's mansion wrote to you again, urging you to go down the mountain. She said that it has been more than 2 years, and you can live in the Yuhui Nunnery or Duke Xing's mansion for the rest of your time. There is no need to restrict you too much. Chu Lu came in and respectfully presented a letter in her hands. Xiao Wanru put down the brush in her hand. After washing her hands in the clear water beside her, she took the letter, walked to the window, opened it, and read it. The letter was written by Madam of Duke Xing recently. She had received such letters almost exclusively, accompanied by some gifts from Madam of Duke Xing. After he finished reading the letter, he folded it again and was about to stuff the letter back in. However, when he saw the letter, he stopped and slowly pulled it out again. This time, he wasn't looking at the words on the letter, but at the corner of the letter that wasn't written. A few orchids and a few leaves were stuck to the corner. The fragrance was just right and emitted a faint fragrance. Patterns of different shades were also painted on the corner. This was the most popular huajian in the capital at this time. Then he took a good piece of paper and carefully drew on it. Then he took the fresh flowers and dried them in the sun. Then he pasted them carefully according to the method he had drawn. Because it was made of fresh flowers, there was a faint fragrance on the paper, and this was the one in front of them. Since Chu Lu bought a few copies of this kind of flower paper from the foot of the mountain, Xiao Wanru would make some by herself when she was free. She was so bored that she even used some painting skills on this kind of flower paper and gained some experience. However, this one was very unique. After looking at it carefully, she raised the corners of her mouth with a smile. Miss, is this posted by Madam of Duke Xing? Seeing Xiao Wanru looking at it seriously, Yu Jia also came over to watch the fun. No. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said with certainty. There were traces of Xiao Yinru on it. If she didn't know, she really wouldn't know. His gaze fell on a few words in the middle. The words were the same as the ones he had seen recently. They were written very casually, and there were even one or two parts that were not matched. Making this kind of flower paper was the play of girls in the boudoir. Madame of Duke Xing would not have the leisure to do this kind of thing. It should be the eldest young lady of Xiao Mansion. Xiao Wanru said with a slight smile. Although it was just an ordinary orchid with a few leaves, it was very imaginative. Moreover, the simpler it was, the more people could compare it. She had no kinship with Xiao Yinru and always treated her as an outsider. First Miss gave some of the flower paper she made to Madame, and Madame took one and gave it to Miss? Chu Lu suddenly understood. She pursed her lips and said, I don't know what they've been up to recently. Weren't they all quiet and peaceful before? She had been on the mountain for more than 2 years. It was indeed very quiet for a period of time before, and no one came to disturb her. After Hui Qing suffered a loss, she no longer dared to deal with Xiao Wanru in public with great fanfare. In addition, great elder princess appeared from time to time, so the entire Yue nunnery was respectful to Xiao Wanru. At least on the surface, no one would make things difficult for her, and no one dared to disturb her because she lived in seclusion here. However, since Madame of Duke Xing sent the first letter to the mountain, there seemed to be more things in the Yue nunnery, and there were always some things related to Xiao Wanru. For example, Yu Jie brought a message just now, saying that there would be a few misses coming here to play today. On the surface, it was to remind Xiao Wanru, for fear of disturbing her quiet cultivation. But in fact, the road in front of the courtyard was not arranged for people to play in the past. On the one hand, it was because she was cultivating in seclusion, and on the other hand, it was because there was a high wall here, where the s of the late emperor were locked up. If something happened, the Yue nunnery could not bear the responsibility, so they should avoid it as much as possible. The Yue nunnery was so big, and there were too many places for them to play. The front mountain, the back mountain, the left side, and the right side were all places. Why did they have to come here? Moreover, this was not the first wave recently. There had been several waves. Even if Xiao Wanru lived in seclusion, sometimes she would still run into them. It was really not a happy thing. She was cultivating in seclusion, not playing. If she ran into people from time to time, people would always gossip. Did you find out anything? Xiao Wanru calmly put the letter back into the envelope, casually put the envelope on the table in front of the window, and asked. Nothing. Nothing. Now everyone in the capital city is saying that the first Miss of Duke Xing's mansion is beautiful in both heart and in person. She deserves to be the first beauty. Chu Lu said disdainfully. Xiao Wanru didn't go down the mountain, but she occasionally went down the mountain. Sometimes she went to the princess mansion to get some things, and sometimes she helped Xiao Wanru buy some things in the market. Now the first Miss Xiao had the best reputation outside. Every time she heard about it, she would talk about the fairy-like behavior, gentle behavior, and beautiful appearance of the first Miss Xiao. Chu Lu really felt that it was ridiculous. The first Miss Xiao was obviously a schemer. If it weren't for her scheming, she wouldn't have made an excuse to retire when her master came up the mountain. Moreover, after leaving for so many years, it seemed that she was really forced to leave by her master. Moreover, the thing about Hui Qing was definitely caused by the first Mississippi. As long as it was mentioned, many people said bad things about her master. Chu Lu wanted to get angry when she heard those words, but after she came back, her master didn't care much and told her not to take it seriously. Wait a little longer. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. Her eyes were very calm. She had painted for a long time just now, so she planned to go out for a walk. Outside the courtyard, the ramp that Chu Luchen took her to walk through before was the place where she used to relax. She left Chu Lu to clean up the room and walked up slowly with Yu Jie. After walking for a while, they came to the high stone where Chu Luchen had shown her before. Hearing some sounds below, she couldn't help looking down. There were several young madams and a group of servant girls talking by the stream below. There was also a nun standing beside them. Obviously, she had led them here to play. Miss, The nuns of the Yuhui nunnery are getting more and more outrageous. They even took the initiative to bring people here. Yujie couldn't help feeling a little angry. It was completely different to say that others accidentally broke in and took the initiative to bring them in. Xiao Yanru lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time and was favored by Pushun Nun. Pushun Nun was originally from a big family and had a great reputation in the Yuhui nunnery. Even if she didn't say anything, there were still many people who felt unfair for her. A female disciple who was about to become a master of painting was delayed by me. It was a loss for the entire Yuhui nunnery. Xiao Wanru leaned against the big stone beside her, rolled her watery eyes, and said softly with a smile, "Miss, Pushun Nun looks like a master on the surface, but in fact, she ignores you, which tells everyone that she doesn't like you." Yu Jie grew up in the nunnery, so how could she not understand some simple principles in the nunnery? Even in a quiet place like the nunnery, there were intrigues. So what? She didn't say that she hated me in person, did she? Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and said slowly. Xiao Wanru had never seen Pushun Nun, who was said to be an otherworldly master, even once. It was said that this nun devoted herself to cultivation and rarely met outsiders. She seemed to be like an ascetic monk. However, there were still rumors in the nunnery that Pushun Nun did not like Xiao Wanru. There were even rumors in private that Pushun Nun disliked people who were too scheming the most. In turn, this was to say that Xiao Wanru was too scheming. However, this was just a rumor, and no one could verify it. If she insisted on asking, she would only ask for humiliation. It was like she had a guilty conscience. If she doesn't say it or hint it, why are there so many rumors? Yu Jie became more and more angry. She patted the corner of the stone beside her angrily and said, "Miss, in fact, I can also make a big fuss with this matter. If I make a big fuss about it, let's see if the Yuhui nunnery can bear it." Yu Jie felt that she really couldn't stand it anymore. Every time she saw a few little nuns whispering to each other when they saw her, she was really annoyed. But when she looked at them, they immediately pretended to be doing their own things. Did they really think that she was a fool? "Why are you in a hurry? They will be anxious." Xiao Wanru said with a smile and reached out to pick up a fallen leaf on the ground. It was going to be autumn soon, and some withered leaves had begun to fall. There was a huge maple tree beside the big stone. When the wind blew, some maple leaves would fall. "Is it a letter from Madame of Duke Xing?" Yu Jie's eyes lit up. She had always believed in Xiao Wanru. A letter from Madame of Duke Xing, Xiao Yanru's increasingly good reputation, and the Yuhui nunnery can't help but involve me. All of these indicate that someone can't wait any longer, or the prince's consort selection is going to start again, and there will be another fight. Xiao Wanru said with a meaningful smile. "Miss, do you mean that the first Miss Xiao is also going to start fighting?" Yu Jie approached Xiao Wanru with excitement in her eyes. She wanted to see which one the first Miss Xiao, who was said to be extremely kind, favored. She won't. She wants to go back to the mountain. She can watch the tigers fight quietly, and what she wants is the final success. Xiao Wanru raised her cherry lips with a hint of sarcasm. Xiao Yanru's mind had never been difficult to guess. She would never put her chips on one person, and what she wanted was the final success. No matter who succeeded, she would reach out to pick the fruit of victory. But there was a premise, and the premise was that she could not get involved in it in advance. "Miss, you blocked her way up the mountain. She wants to trick you down the mountain. As long as you stop cultivating in seclusion or are not sincere in your cultivation, she can spread the rumor that you are just talking about observing filial piety. Since it is just a talk, it seems that her behavior of going up the mountain to learn painting seems to be more noble." Yu Jie had been with Xiao Wanru for a long time, and gradually some of her ways of thinking were similar to Xiao Wanru's. At this time, after thinking carefully, she immediately understood. Wait patiently. She is in a hurry, but I am not. Xiao Wanru leisurely swept the tip of her nose with a fallen leaf and said with a little naughtiness. She was a little curious about why Xiao Yanru ended up in the Imperial Palace in the last life. Was it because Chu Luchen was the crown prince at that time? She guessed everyone but ignored Chu Luchen, so she had to enter the Imperial Palace to be a concubine? In this life, there had been a lot of changes. She wanted to see how far Xiao Yanru could go. It had been more than 2 years, almost 3 years. It was time for her to return to the secular world. Chapter 483. On the mountains, the scenery and trees were rich. Behind the rugged rocks, a girl in a black robe was fluttering in the wind. She was extremely beautiful. Although her clothes were light and elegant, she had a kind of fairy-like posture. That kind of ethereal and elegant posture was definitely not something that could be described by gorgeous clothes. At first glance, people would think that she was an immortal. She was pure and gorgeous. She was absolutely different, but it made people feel that she should be like this. Her appearance was beyond everyone's imagination. Hey, where is she? She was here just now. Why did she disappear? Is she really a fairy? This is the Yuhui nunnery. It's really possible. Chu Liuxin, who was not far away from these misses, looked at Xiao Wanru in astonishment. His eyes widened. He pointed at Xiao Wanru excitedly and said to Eunuch Lu, "It's the girl from Qin's mansion, the girl who climbed over the wall. Your Highness, she is now the 5th miss of Duke Xing's mansion." Eunuch Lu was also stunned, but he still knew how to reply. He had seen the 5th Miss Xiao before. Although she was very delicate, she was not so beautiful. It had only been more than 2 years since he last saw her. It was unbelievable. Eunuch Lu felt that the 1st Miss Xiao, who was widely known now, could not compare with the 5th Miss Xiao. Duke Xing's mansion was really full of beauties. Let's go and have a look. Chu Yusin excitedly pulled his lapel and looked up at the terrain where Xiao Wanru was. He and Xiao Liuzi's position was a little higher than those young ladies' positions, but because they were a little higher, they could see the situation on the opposite side more clearly than the young ladies below. But if they walked directly over, it would be a little further. The mountain road was rugged, so they could only see, but not meet. Your Highness, if we go there now, the 5th Miss Xiao should have gone down. Eunuch Lu felt that it was not appropriate, so he looked around and persuaded. If they went down now, they would first meet the misses who asked His Highness to go on a blind date. But they couldn't like them, so they had to pass by them to find another Mississippi. Eunuch Lu was afraid that these misses would complain to concubine Ming after they went back. I don't care. I have to meet an old friend of mine and say hello to him, Chu Liuxin said excitedly. He turned around and was about to rush down the cliff where he was. Your Highness, 5th Miss Xiao saw you. Xiao Liuzi reached out to grab him and said anxiously. Chu Liuxin hurriedly looked back and saw that Xiao Wanru, who was on the high cliff, made a simple bow to him, which matched her black robe. Then she disappeared behind the big stone with Yujia, who was also dressed in a black robe. There should be a mountain path in the forest. Was he going down the mountain? Let's go and have a look, Chu Liuxin said stubbornly. Your Highness, have you thought about what you are going to say when you meet the few young ladies below? Xiao Liuzi stretched out his hand and pointed at the few young ladies from the various mansions who were still discussing spiritedly below the cliff. Chu Liuxin stopped and scratched the ground helplessly. Then he looked up at the figure in front of him, who had already disappeared. His head drooped. Let's go. We'll take a detour in front. Maybe we'll bump into them. I've been friends with 5th Miss Xiao for many years. I haven't met her for so many years. Now that I see her, I have to go over and greet her. Chu Liuxin answered absent-mindedly and walked down the mountain path in another direction. He would not meet those young ladies if he went down from here, but he was getting farther and farther away from the place where Xiao Wanru had just appeared. Xiao Liuzi wondered if he had met a fake highness. When did His Highness and 5th Miss Xiao have such a good relationship? They had just met, but 5th Miss Xiao had been hiding from His Highness. After that, His Highness had repeatedly complained that 5th Miss Xiao was not a good person and said that he must find an opportunity to punish 5th Miss Xiao. Later, he just didn't have a chance. Why did they become old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years when they met again? Where did this so-called old friend come from? Why didn't he, as a personal eunuch, know? Touching his confused head, Xiao Liuzi felt that it was better not to ask. So be it. Anyway, it was his prince's opinion. Fifth, Miss Xiao might think about it. As a eunuch, of course, he couldn't care too much. Chu Liuxin hurriedly went around the cliff with Xiao Liuzixing. After a long detour, they arrived at the place where Xiao Wenru had appeared before. As expected, there was no one there. When he looked down, the young ladies who had been here before had also disappeared. There was no one on the empty mountain. Looking down from a distance, he saw layers of Buddha halls in the nunnery among the mountains. There was also a high wall that isolated one part of the nunnery. There were so many Buddha halls and so many houses. He really couldn't tell which one was Xiao Wenru's place of cultivation. Your Highness, where is that place? Why is there such a high wall to separate it? Such a high wall should be about the same as the palace wall. How could there be such a high wall in the Yuhui nunnery? Aren't they afraid of being investigated by the government? Xiao Liuzi's eyes fell on the high wall in surprise. How could the high wall built in a nunnery be of such a high standard? How could the high wall built in a nunnery be of such a high standard? The former emperor's concubines are all here. Chu Liuxin said weakly. After saying that, his eyes lit up and fell on the high wall. Since this was the best place for cultivation, Xiao Wenru had stayed there for 3 years. Could it be that she was there? Or even if she was not there, she should be on the side. He had to admit that at this moment, Prince Exin knew the truth. Come on, let's go down. Chu Liuxin immediately became energetic again. He turned around and walked down with Xiao Liuzi. The high wall was very high. Even if they reached the bottom, they could still see it from a distance. Along the way, the goal was quite clear. Soon, Chu Liuxin and Xiao Liuzi stood under the high wall. But there was no door here. The two of them walked along the high wall and finally saw a side door. Xiao Liuzi went forward to knock on the door, but no one answered. Chu Liuxin strode over and wanted to knock on the door himself. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him. What can I do for you? No one is allowed to disturb you here. Please go back. The two of them turned around and saw 2 middle-aged nuns standing behind them, looking at them with unkind expressions. This is Prince Exin. Our Prince Exin wants to see the person who is cultivating in seclusion inside. Xiao Liuzi reacted quickly. He immediately understood that there should be guards here, so he quickly revealed Chu Liuxin's identity. Sure enough, the 2 nuns looked a little better. One of them looked Chu Liuxin up and down, then lowered her head and said, Prince Exin, please go back. It's not convenient to disturb the person who is cultivating here. Since the former emperor's concubines were sent here to cultivate in seclusion, it meant that they would live in seclusion from then on. No one was allowed to approach them or come out. Are there really people who are cultivating in seclusion inside? Chu Liuxin was happy. Of course they are people who are dedicated to cultivating. They are all outsiders and have nothing to do with the secular world. If you have nothing to do, please leave. The nun raised her head and said firmly. She did not tolerate Chu Liuxin's behavior because of his identity. An outsider? Chu Liuxin felt that something was wrong. Even if Xiao Wenru was cultivating in seclusion, she should not be considered an outsider, right? Didn't she say that she would cultivate in seclusion for 3 years to observe filial piety for her parents? He asked anxiously, are those who cultivate in seclusion for a few years and then go out? Those who cultivate in seclusion for a few years or a few months are not inside. The people inside plan to cultivate in seclusion for the rest of their lives. The nun explained. Is there anyone who has cultivated in seclusion for a few years on your mountain? Chu Liuxin breathed a sigh of relief, rolled his eyes and asked. I don't know about this. Please ask others. We are only in charge of the affairs of the sect here. The nun said unmoved. You don't know even though she is right beside you? A beautiful little nun. No, not a little nun. Where's the one with hair? A beautiful little nun with hair. Have you seen her? Chu Liuxin gestured a few times and looked at the nun in front of him expectantly. Since he had described it in such detail, she should know. The misses of aristocratic families who cultivated in seclusion on the mountain would basically wear the black clothes given by the Yuhui nunnery. Although the description of the so-called little nun with hair was not very detailed, It should be very vivid. In addition, he had specially added, in a few years. Chu Liuxin felt that there was no one else but Xiao Wanru. There's one over there. The nun thought for a moment, pointed in a direction and said, Great, thank you. Chu Liuxin looked in that direction and saw a courtyard in the distance. He was overjoyed and cupped his hands to the nun. When he was about to leave, he suddenly heard the door beside him suddenly open and a woman's exclamation came from inside, Nuns, come and have a look. She is in trouble. As she spoke, there was a whimpering sound. Chu Liuxin subconsciously looked back and saw a nun in her 20s standing at the side door with tears on her face and a look of panic. He was surprised and froze for a moment. He moved aside and looked at the nun in the door from head to toe. Compared with the nun outside, the nun inside the door looked much weaker. Even though her black hair had been shaved, she still looked a little delicate. What's the matter? A nun stepped forward and asked anxiously. Our master vomited blood. Please go and get a doctor, otherwise, it will be really bad. The nun inside said while wiping her tears. The two nuns outside looked at each other, and the former one asked again, She didn't need to take the medicine before? It's useless. She is still sick and vomited blood. Please, save our master. The nun inside knelt down with a plop and kowtowed 3 times to the two nuns outside. She raised her head and looked at the two nuns with tears in her eyes. You go back first. We will report to the abbess. Someone will come to see the doctor later. A nun outside said. Then one of the two stayed behind and the other hurried to report. As for the nun inside the door, she closed the door again. Only when she closed it, she stole a glance at Chu Liuxin and then closed the door. Chapter 484. Your Highness, let's go. Eunuch Liuzi reached out and pulled Chu Liuxin's sleeve. What happened here was so strange. Eunuch Liuzi felt that it was better to stay away from this kind of thing related to the late emperor's S. Okay, let's go. Although Chu Liuxin was curious, he did not want to stay and listen to the result. He turned around and left in the direction pointed by the nun with Eunuch Liuzi. The nun guarding outside the door breathed a sigh of relief. Although they had orders not to let anyone in, the person in front of them was the 4th son of the current emperor. If he really made trouble and wanted to go in to have a look, they could not stop him. It was the best for him to leave now. Looking around and seeing that there were no suspicious people, the nun returned to the courtyard where she lived. After she left, a little while later, the side door opened quietly. It was the nun who had been crying. She poked her head out and looked around. She found Chu Liuxin's back and observed carefully, and then carefully withdrew her head. Then the side door closed silently. Your Highness? Which highness is this? She muttered to herself in a very soft voice, like the autumn wind brushing past her face. Apart from herself, no one else knew that she had said such a sentence before. It was a very small courtyard with 3 rooms, including the main room. The low wall was completely different from the high wall he saw just now. Chu Liuxin looked at the courtyard in front of him with suspicion. Was this really the place where Xiao Wanru cultivated? Even if Xiao Wanru was not favored by Duke Xing's mansion, she was still the granddaughter of Ru and great elder princess. Why could she only live in such a simple place? Could it be that all the misses who came here to cultivate in seclusion had to look like this? He suddenly felt that this kind of cultivation was really not something that ordinary misses from aristocratic families could bear. No wonder misses from aristocratic families rarely cultivated in seclusion. Chu Liuxin felt that he might not be able to bear such a living environment. She had no food to eat, no room to live well, and had to be locked up all day long. How could the little girl who was used to climbing over the wall bear it? Did she also climb over the wall at night? Your Highness. Eunuch Liuzi saw that he was stunned there for a long time and reminded him. Knock on the door. Chu Liuxin straightened his robe and said. He had not seen this little girl for many years. Now that they met again, he had to leave a good impression on her. Xiao Liuzi obeyed and went forward to knock on the door. After a few knocks, the door opened. A girl in a black robe looked at the master and servant outside in surprise. For you. It was a beautiful girl about 14 or 15 years old. She was dressed in a fitting black robe and her black hair was simply tied up. At first glance, she looked almost the same as Xiao Wanru. Even their heights were similar. Xiao Liuzi was stunned for a moment, but he reacted quickly and hurriedly said, "We're looking for the owner of this courtyard." "I'm the owner of this courtyard. What business do you have with me?" The young girl sized up the two of them with vigilance in her eyes. "You are the owner of this yard, how could you?" "Where's Xiao Wu? Where is she?" Chu Liuxin pushed Xiao Liuzi aside and came forward to ask. "I'm the owner of this courtyard, and I've lived here for 5 years. I've never changed my place." "I'm afraid you found the wrong person," the young girl said unhappily and reached out to close the door. Most of the people in the Yuhui nunnery were women. Even if there were men who came to offer incense, they would not come in. Chu Liuxin reached out to stop the door and looked the young girl up and down. "Who are you if not Xiao Wu's servant girl? Have you lived here for 5 years? Don't tell me that you've been living on the mountain since you were very young?" "Young master, I don't know who Xiao Wu is, and I'm not the servant girl you mentioned. As for what you said, I've been living on the mountain since I was a child. If you don't believe me, you can ask other people in the Yuhui nunnery," the young girl said unhappily. After saying these words, she slammed the door hard. Chu Liuxin was caught off guard. When the door was closed, he was also pushed a few steps away. He looked at the closed door in astonishment and gasped. "She's really strong." Although he was caught off guard, it was a man's strength after all. The woman in the door was also strong, and she even closed the door in front of him. But was it really not Xiao Wanru inside? Chu Liuxin didn't think so. He went forward and slammed the door hard, saying loudly, "Xiao Wu, come out. I have something to talk to you about." He shouted loudly and slammed the door loudly. The door suddenly opened, and the beautiful young girl inside the door stared at Chu Liuxin coldly. "Young master, if you have something to talk to someone else, please leave. I live here alone, and the Xiao Wu you're looking for is not here." "I don't believe it. I have to go in and have a look." Chu Liuxin poked his head in and saw that there was a very simple small courtyard inside. He wanted to see what was going on. Seeing him poking his head in while talking to himself, the young girl was so angry that her face turned pale. She suppressed her anger and said coldly, "What if the person you're looking for is not inside? If the person I'm looking for is not here, I will naturally leave, and I will not disturb you again." Chu Liuxin said indifferently. His words were extremely contemptuous, but it was annoying to be knocked on the door like this. The young girl had no choice but to move aside. She pointed inside and said, "Young master, please leave as soon as possible after you've seen it." People in the mountains are most afraid of being disturbed when they cultivate. Okay, I'll leave after I've seen it clearly. Even if you don't drive me away, I won't stay," Chu Liuxin said with a smile as he walked in. Of course, he would not take things too hard and go to the mountains to cultivate. After cultivating like this for 3 years, Chu Liuxin felt that he was not far from becoming a saint. The courtyard was as simple as it was outside. There were 3 rooms, and the door of the main room was slightly open. Chu Liuxin poked his head in and took a look. Under the cold eyes of the young girl, he left with a hollow smile. The 2 rooms on the left and right were not inhabited by people. There were some sundries in them. One of them looked like a study, and the other one looked like some sundries in Chu Liuxin's eyes. There were no people living on either side, only one person living in the middle. It seemed that it was really not Xiao Wanru. He just saw Xiao Wanru with a servant girl, who he had seen before. Servant girls could not live with their masters, and he heard that Xiao Wanru had more than one servant girl. Thinking of this was indeed not Xiao Wanru's place. Chu Liuxin had to admit that he had made a mistake, or the nun who had shown him the way had made a mistake. Seeing that Chu Liuxin was about to leave, the young girl suddenly asked, "Is the person you're looking for an extremely beautiful lady?" Yes, an extremely beautiful one, about 13 or 14 years old." "Have you seen her?" "She has also cultivated here for 3 years. You should know her, right?" Chu Liuxin immediately had hope again. At this time, he was very quick-witted and immediately grasped the key point. She lives far away from here, but there is a quiet room in front that belongs to her. I heard that she painted there. It was not her who lived there in the beginning. The young girl gave a brief introduction. Yes, this is her. Where is her quiet room? Chu Liuxin was overjoyed. He did not care what others said and nodded repeatedly. It was not easy for him to get some news, so he naturally would not let it go. It's in the opposite direction from where I am. Go from here, turn left along the road, and then turn right after a while. You will see a large courtyard, the young girl said. The door was closed heavily behind Chu Liuxin, as if she had shut the plague outside the door. However, the young girl did not leave and frowned tightly. She did not know whether the current situation was good or bad. At this time, she could not allow any accident to ruin the big plan. She hoped that she was thinking too much and that this person would leave soon. Chu Liuxin felt that he could still ask some questions. Looking at the tightly closed door, he had no choice but to follow this direction to look for her. This time, it did not take long for him to find a courtyard. Looking at this courtyard, Chu Liuxin felt that it was a little reasonable. Such a courtyard seemed to be the work of an great elder princess. The one just now was really not good enough. Xiao Liuzi went forward to knock on the door. When the door opened, he saw Yu Jie. Xiao Liuzi was immediately overjoyed and said, "Master, come quickly. It's fifth Miss Xiao's maid. Come and have a look." Chu Liuxin strode over and laughed proudly when he saw Yu Jie in a black robe at the door. Looking at the master and servant who were laughing happily at the door, Yu Jie was stunned at first, and then she looked at them expressionlessly. She saw that they could no longer laugh. Who could still laugh when being looked at as if they were looking at a fool? When the smiles on their faces stopped, Yu Jie bowed sideways to Chu Liuxin and asked, "Your Highness, what's the matter? Is your miss in there?" Chu Liuxin stuck his head out and wanted to look inside again, but his eyes were blocked by Yu Jie. "My miss is inside. She is meditating now, so it's not convenient for her to see you, Your Highness." "Meditating? She's not really a nun. I have something to ask her." Chu Liuxin said carelessly. "Your Highness, please go back. My miss is meditating inside and it's not convenient for her to see you." Yu Jie reminded him again. "I know that your miss is meditating. Even if she is a nun, there will be 2 or 3 old friends visiting. How can I not see her? Get out of the way, get out of the way. It's rare for me to see your Mississippi," Chu Liuxin said impatiently and was about to come in. Yu Jie still wanted to stop him, but she heard Xiao Wanru's voice behind her. "Yu Jie, leave. Let Prince Exon come in." In the corridor, Xiao Wanru stood in a plain and loose black robe, which reflected her snow-white skin and beautiful face. Just now, Chu Liyue saw her too clearly from a distance. At this time, looking at Xiao Wanru standing in the corridor, he clearly saw her elegance and charm. Her cherry lips were naturally red and plump, and her dark watery eyes were as deep as a pool. Chu Liyue stopped and his heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. Xiao Wanru in front of him really amazed him. Although he had long known that Xiao Wanru would definitely be an outstanding beauty when she grew up, it was one thing to know and another to see. Prince Exon felt that the weather was too hot. It was not a good sign that it was still so hot in autumn. Could it be that it would be hot all the way in autumn this year? Chapter 485. Xiao Wanru sat cross-legged on the mat, reached out to pour a cup of tea for Chu Liuxin, pushed it to the opposite side of the table, and said lightly, "There is no good tea in the mountain residence. Please forgive me, Your Highness." Chu Liuxin picked up the tea beside him and took a sip. He tasted it and said, "It's not bad. At least it's not like what I thought. I just soaked it with firewood and drank it." "Your Highness, why are you here?" Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip, put it down and said, "Of course I'm looking for an old friend. Xiao Wu, you've been here for more than 2 years. Isn't it time to go down the mountain?" Chu Liuxin said as if he was very familiar with her. He directly called 5th Miss Xiao as Xiao Wu. "About half a year," Xiao Wanru said calmly. "How did you know I was here, Your Highness?" "I went to the wrong place before. There is a lonely woman living there. It is said that she has lived there for 5 years. Are there many such women who have lived in the Yuhui nunnery for several years? Chu Liuxin felt that it was really strange. It was already shocking that Xiao Wanru would live here for 3 years. Now there was someone who would live here for 5 years. Did she really plan to cultivate here for a long time and become a nun? Xiao Wanru lowered her head and thought for a while. Her butterfly-like long eyelashes fluttered twice and she said slowly, "Did Miss Mo tell me the way? I don't know if it's Miss Mo's or Miss Chow's. Anyway, it's a small yard with 3 rooms in that position. I went the wrong way before. I don't know how the nun of the Yuhui nunnery showed me the way. I actually went to the wrong place," Chu Liuxin said discontentedly. He picked up the tea beside him and took another sip. "Miss, it should be Miss Mo." After thinking for a while, Yu Jie said affirmatively. Miss Mo had lived here before they went up the mountain. She had a cold temperament. They had been here for more than 2 years, but they were not familiar with her. They only knew that her surname was Mo and that she had lived on the mountain for 4 or 5 years. It was said that she was a relative of a nun of the Yuhui nunnery, so she was taken care of here. Occasionally she would help the Yuhui nunnery with things. However, it was unknown why she had been living here since she was not a nun. It seemed that she had no intention of leaving. "All right, let's not talk about Miss Mo anymore. Xiao Wu, do you really not want to leave? You have lived here for so long. Although the scenery is beautiful, no matter how beautiful it is, you can't live here forever. You are a miss from an aristocratic family, the lineal daughter of Duke Xing's mansion, and the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. I am your cousin, so I have to care about you," Chu Liuxin said as if he was familiar with him. "Your Highness, I live here to cultivate in seclusion and observe mourning for my father. Please don't bother me," Xiao Wanru said with a serious face. "Hey, Fifth Xiao, how did this prince disturb your cultivation? This king and you can be considered old friends. Back when you climbed over the wall, this king was the one who kept watch for you. Now, you're turning your back on me. That's not good. After all, we have a good relationship and we're cousins." Chu Liuxin stammered with an aggrieved expression, saying, "You're wrong. You're ungrateful. How can you do this?" Xiao Wanru really felt a headache. He reached out and pressed his forehead twice, gesturing for him to shut up. After Chu Liuxin stopped, Xiao Wanru said, "Your Highness, may I ask you why you want to come to the Yuhui nunnery?" She had been in the Yuhui nunnery for more than 2 years. She had not seen Chu Liuxin come here before, but she knew that he had come several times recently. Although she did not see it with her own eyes, how could there be no rumors about Chu Liuxin going up the mountain? She did not appear in front of others, but Chu Lu and Yu Jie came out from time to time to inquire about things. "I didn't intend to come here at first, but I heard that the mountain scenery in the depths of the Yuhui nunnery is very beautiful, so I wanted to come and have a look. Thinking that you happen to be cultivating here, I came to see you again." Seeing that Xiao Wanru did not drive him away, Chu Liuxin's mood immediately improved. He explained with a smile, and then leaned his head toward Xiao Wanru and said, "Your big sister has been in the limelight recently. Even Imperial grandmother praised her. She is really talented and beautiful. She even said that in front of many people." "What limelight?" Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. At this time, Xiao Yanru was in the limelight again? She drew a picture. "Yes, it's the scenery here." Chu Liuxin jumped up, walked to the huge window, and drew the half-closed curtain a little wider. Looking at the mountains outside, he nodded repeatedly and said, "The painting is really similar and beautiful. It is said that it was drawn in her quiet room. It had been drawn long ago, but it was not dyed. Now that it has been dyed, it is really beautiful. Imperial grandmother saw it and said that she wanted to see it in person." "The Empress Dowager is coming?" Xiao Wanru's eyes darkened a little. "Of course she can't come right away, but Imperial grandmother is interested, so she naturally wants to see it. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, of course, it may be 10 days, half a month, or 1 or 2 years." Chu Liuxin laughed and thought it was very interesting. "Why did Big Sister take out this painting?" Xiao Wanru asked calmly. Her watery eyes blinked twice to hide the darkness at the bottom of her eyes. No wonder there were more and more people coming here recently. It turned out that there was such a thing. It is dedicated to Imperial Grandmother. It is said that Imperial Grandmother likes to look at the scenery, so she presented this painting she has painted for many years to Imperial Grandmother. It happened to be the day when Imperial Grandmother received the honorary title of aristocratic family, so there were a lot of old madams. Chu Liuxin reached out to touch the window and answered without looking back. Sometimes, the Empress Dowager and the Empress would get in touch with the madams of aristocratic families and ask them to enter the palace on a few days. Xiao Wenru knew this in her last life. However, all the madams who came were honorary title of aristocratic family. The Empress Dowager's old madams were the main guests, while the Empress Dowager's old madams were some younger madams. Big sister is not old enough, right? Xiao Wenru lowered her eyebrows and asked. No matter how great Xiao Yenru's reputation was, she would not appear on such an occasion. It was brought by the old madam of your mansion, not by the first Miss Xiao herself. But after that, Imperial Grandmother was very happy and specially sent someone to summon her. It happened that I was also there, so I saw the whole scene clearly. Chu Liuxin said proudly. He also saw the painting at that time. On the one hand, he felt that Xiao Yenru was really beautiful, and on the other hand, he also felt that he had to find an opportunity to see it. That was why concubine Ming asked him to go on a blind date and specially set the place in Yuhui Nunnery. Of course, Chu Liuxin felt that he originally wanted to look for Xiao Wenru, but he couldn't find her several times before. Does the Empress Dowager know that I live here now? Xiao Wenru's long curly eyelashes fluttered twice, and then she asked leisurely. Imperial Grandmother probably didn't know, and I didn't know at that time either. It was only after I arrived at Yuhui Nunnery that I asked the nuns in the nunnery that I learned that you are using the first Miss Xiao's silence room. It is said that you are also using it for painting. Xiao Wu, can you do it? Only someone like your elder sister can draw well. Don't tell me you're learning from her? Chu Liuxin turned his head and asked curiously. He had never heard that Xiao Wenru could paint before. Why did she suddenly jump out and say that she wanted to paint and use Xiao Yenru's silence room? Oh, I understand. You said that on purpose. You just want to occupy this beautiful place with a beautiful scenery. It's a good idea. If I live on the mountain, I will definitely choose a good place. If this good place is occupied by others, of course, I will find a reason to occupy it again. Chu Liuxin suddenly felt that he understood. He looked at the beautiful scenery outside the window, and then looked at Xiao Wenru, who was sitting leisurely on the mat and drinking tea, and laughed. Xiao Wenru squinted at him and said, Prince, do you mean that I deliberately competed with the first Miss Xiao? I didn't say that. I don't know whether you competed or not, but at least you occupied the first Miss Xiao's silence room. However, the scenery here is beautiful. Even if it is empty, it will be a waste not to occupy it. Chu Liuxin walked back with a laugh and sat on the mat again. He imitated Xiao Wenru and crossed his legs. When he saw Xiao Wenru drinking tea just now, he suddenly felt hot and thirsty. He picked up the teacup at hand and drank more than half of the cup at once. Only then did he feel a little thirsty. He handed the cup in his hand to Xiao Wenru, indicating that it was empty. Xiao Wenru reached out to elegantly pick up the teapot, filled more than half of his cup, and then added some for herself. What did Big Sister say after entering the palace? She didn't say much. She just flattered Imperial Grandmother and made her very happy. Imperial Grandmother also rewarded her heavily. She said that Miss Xiao was blessed, a kind and good girl, and that she had a good sisterly relationship with Xiao Tianzi. Has a good sisterhood? Xiao Wenru's heart skipped a beat. She held the teacup harder, looked up at Chu Liuxin curiously, and asked, How did my big sister show a good sisterhood? Is it your birthday? Chu Liuxin asked with a smile. Did my good big sister say this? Xiao Wenru guessed lazily. Yes, it was really your good big sister. She said that your birthday is coming soon. This is the last birthday you will celebrate in Yuhui Nunnery. She wants to come and spend it with you. Chu Liuxin said, On that day, why don't I come too? Anyway, I have nothing to do. Although Chu Liuxin also had a position now, it seemed to Chu Liuxin that it was an idle position. His father had assigned a position to his eldest brother and second brother. If he did not assign a position to himself, he would probably not be able to stand it. That was why he had his own business. He did not take it too seriously. He still played as he used to. Your Highness, let's talk about my big sister. I want to know how she helped me celebrate my birthday. Xiao Wanru's watery eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. She realized that she had neglected something. She had thought that she would at least wait until she was forced to go down the mountain before taking action. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yanru took action first. Xiao Wanru said so in front of everyone in the Empress Dowager's palace, which attracted a lot of people's attention. At the same time, it also made people think that she snatched Xiao Yanru's silence room in order to learn from her. The more she learned, the uglier she became. This was probably the situation at present. Not only did she learn to walk, but she was also domineering. She snatched her big sister's silence room and made her unable to come back. This should also be a reason, right? Xiao Yanru couldn't wait to take action. Her birthday was half a month later. Chapter 486. She said that you have lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time. She didn't let you have a good birthday in the Yuhui nunnery before because she was afraid of disturbing your cultivation. Now that it is your last birthday in the Yuhui nunnery and it is almost time to go down the mountain, she can't disturb you. She also said that in the following period of time, if you allow her, she also wants to observe mourning with you and go down the mountain together. Xiao Wanru observed mourning for her parents for 3 years, but Xiao Yanru didn't have to. After all, they were separated by a branch. But if she had to observe mourning for a few months, it would be reasonable and people would praise her as a filial daughter. She is really affectionate and loyal. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly with her eyes indifferent. Don't you like it? Chu Liuxin sensitively sensed the unhappiness in Xiao Wanru's words and said in surprise. Why should I like it? How can I be so shameless to celebrate my birthday in such a quiet Yuhui nunnery and disturb the cultivation of so many nuns? Aren't I afraid that others will say that I don't follow the rules and behave improperly? Xiao Wanru raised her head with obvious displeasure in her watery eyes. Her words reminded Chu Liuxin. He reached out to pat his thigh and said, Yes. It is inappropriate to celebrate a birthday in a nunnery. It is a great disrespect to Buddha. Since it is a great disrespect, my big sister wants to celebrate it for me. In the end, everyone will definitely think that I have thought about it and I am the one who made the mistake. Xiao Wanru said. Could it be that she said that because she didn't pay attention? Maybe she didn't think so much. Chu Liuxin thought for a while and explained for Xiao Yanru. Xiao Wanru was not surprised by Chu Liuxin's explanation. In the past 3 years, she had stayed on the mountain, but there was news about Xiao Yanru from time to time. The reputation of the first Miss Xiao was getting better and better. With such a good reputation, even if there were some small flaws, others would take the initiative to explain for her. She was such a good person. How could she have any bad ideas and actions? At most, she didn't think it through. If something bad really happened, it was just a coincidence. Chu Liuxin's explanation was in line with most people's thoughts. Or if something really happened, others would only blame her, not Xiao Yanru. Your Highness Prince Xin, are you here to help First Miss persuade her to have a lively birthday party in the Yuhui nunnery and then be scolded by everyone? Yu Jie couldn't help but say angrily. Hey, what are you talking about? How is this prince here to help your young miss persuade you? But your young miss is really not bad. Chu Liuxin widened his eyes in displeasure. Does your Highness mean that big sister will express in front of the Empress Dowager that she will love me, help me celebrate my birthday, and then accompany me on the mountain for a period of time? Xiao Wanru interrupted him, smiled slightly, and summed it up. Yes, that's what I mean. She is also kind. Chu Liuxin was a little dispirited. Then can I trouble your Highness to help me take a letter down the mountain to my elder sister? Tell her about my situation on the mountain and tell her that I don't want to celebrate my birthday on the mountain. Thank you for your kind intentions. Xiao Wanru's watery eyes flickered slightly, and she already had an idea. Okay, no problem. That's right. You two are blood-related sisters, so you should love each other. If there's anything, you can explain it to her. Chu Liuxin was happy and nodded repeatedly, thinking that it should be like this. Xiao Wanru stood up, walked to the table in front of the window, picked up the writing brush, thought for a while, and wrote. After finishing writing, she let it dry for a while, folded the paper, put it in the envelope, turned around, handed the letter to Chu Liuxin and said, "Sorry to trouble you, Your Highness Prince Exen. My elder sister and I have been friends for a long time, but I haven't seen her until now." "You haven't seen First Miss Xiao?" Chu Liuxin took the letter and said in surprise, "Didn't you two get together when you were in the Yuhui nunnery? When you just came up the mountain, she shouldn't have come down the mountain yet, right?" She was indeed on the mountain at that time, but she said that she would focus on painting in this quiet room. She wanted to see me outside the quiet room, but I didn't expect that Grandma asked her to go down the mountain. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, and her eyes became more and more indifferent. These words seemed to be a coincidence, but Chu Liuxin inexplicably heard some other meanings. He was not really stupid, but because Xiao Yenru's reputation was too good before, he didn't think in that direction. At this moment, he heard some meanings. He pinched the envelope in his hand and asked in confusion, "Are you two on bad terms?" "I don't know." Xiao Wanru shook her head and looked a little bitter. Then she bowed deeply and said, "I have to trouble you, Your Highness. Or if Big Sister really makes such a thing happen, I can't escape the reputation of being arrogant and conceited. What's more, I'm still in the mourning period. Although it's almost over, it's not over after all. I'm afraid that I'm unfilial and inconsiderate." Chu Liuxin's heart suddenly moved. He suddenly remembered that when Xiao Wanru had just recognized her as her relative, there was a rumor in the capital city that everyone in Duke Xing's mansion didn't like her. Could it be that the first Miss Xiao also didn't like her for this reason? Thinking of this, what the first Miss Xiao said in front of the Imperial grandmother did not seem to be so kind. At that time on the mountain of the Yuhui nunnery, both of them were there, but they couldn't find time to meet each other. Now she said with great fanfare that she was going to celebrate the birthday of this cousin whom she had never met. The meaning of this was somewhat inexplicable. "I'll send a letter to the first Miss Xiao for you and explain it for you," Chu Liuxin said cautiously. "Thank you, Prince Exen." Xiao Wanru thanked him again. Since he had given the order, Chu Liuxin didn't stay any longer. He said goodbye to Xiao Wanru and walked out. But after taking a few steps, he suddenly turned around and said, "I'll give you a gift on your birthday. We're old friends. It's fine if you don't know it, but if you know it and I don't give it to you, it won't be justifiable." "Thank you, Prince Exine. It's just that I don't need to cultivate on this mountain so that others won't talk about it." Xiao Wanru refused with a smile. Chu Liuxin touched his head and felt that what she said made sense, so he immediately turned around and left. After he left, Yu Jie took a step forward and said, "Miss, what does the first Miss Xiao want to do?" "I can't wait any longer," Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. She returned to the mat and sat down. After thinking for a while, she glanced at the whole quiet room and suddenly reached out to point at a box in the corner. "Bring this over and have a look." The box was very exquisite, but only one corner could be seen. It was covered with a blanket, which covered most of the box. In the past, no one had noticed the box in the corner. Looking around the room, only this box, which had been ignored, was very likely. "Miss, it's full of sundries used by the first Miss Xiao for painting. What's the use of it?" Yu Jie said in confusion, but she still walked over, lifted the blanket, and pulled the box over. It was tightly locked with a key. "Open it," Xiao Wanru said with a slight frown. The box had been here for a long time, but she didn't care about it. But now she had to pay attention to it. Xiao Yenru might make use of everything possible, so she had to kill all possibilities in the initial state. It was a little familiar. "Miss, just open it like this? Will be discovered." Yu Jie widened her eyes in shock and said, "Without the key, she could only break it open. If she broke it open by force, the first Miss Xiao would definitely ask about it." Although she had never seen the first Miss Xiao, Yu Jie felt that she came with evil intentions. She could cause a lot of trouble, let alone something important. Is there anything else in this silence room that belongs to her? Xiao Wanru looked around with her watery eyes and asked. That's all, Yu Jie said honestly. After living here for more than 2 years, even if there were some things that belonged to the first Miss Xiao, they had long been gone. Only this box had been left here because it was locked and looked big. Besides, Pushun Nun told them to keep it. Then open it and have a look. Xiao Wanru said. Yes, I'll take it to the yard and smash it. Seeing that Xiao Wanru insisted, Yu Jie nodded and looked around. She didn't see any tools that could be used, so she dragged the box to the door. When she arrived at the door, she lifted the box over the threshold, found a sharp stone in the yard, and smashed the lock on the box in the corridor. Then she dragged it in again. Yu Jie opened the wooden box and saw what was inside. She was stunned and asked, Miss, what is this? It was a set of clothes, and it was actually a set of gorgeous clothes. Although gorgeous clothes were precious, they were not rare. However, this was in the Yuhui nunnery. In the past 2 years, Yu Jie had seen plain and dark black clothes. She had never expected to see a set of gorgeous clothes here. She reached out and took out some clothes, skirts, and a large jewelry box. She opened it and found a set of exquisite jewelry. Miss, the first Miss Xiao's clothes were left here. Yu Jie murmured in surprise, but it is said that the first Miss Xiao has devoted herself to learning painting and meditated. Why did she leave such a set of clothes here? Are you sure it is hers? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and was not too surprised. If it is not hers, could it be yours, miss? Yu Jie said subconsciously. After saying that, she suddenly took a deep breath and said, Miss, did the first Miss Xiao really plan to do so? This set of clothes is so new. It doesn't seem to have been left here for 2 or 3 years. It was not only the first Miss Xiao who had stayed in this quiet room, but also her master. Yu Jie knew that her master did not have this set of clothes, but she could not stop others from thinking so. She had been in mourning for 3 years and cultivated restlessly on the mountain. She even found some gorgeous clothes and took them up the mountain. No one would believe that she was cultivating and observing mourning. If this kind of thing was verified, the good reputation she had accumulated over the past 3 years would be swept away. Even if it wasn't verified, with such an incident, it was enough to make people suspect that Mrs. 2 years of secluded cultivation was just a cover-up for others to see. The so-called filial piety was, of course, all fake. Xiao Wanru reached out to pick up the clothes and touched them, and then shook them. She had grown taller quickly in the past few years, and this set of clothes was obviously not enough. Fortunately, Miss won't be able to wear such clothes. They are too small. Yu Jie relaxed. She took a breath, patted her chest and said, she could tell at a glance that the clothes were not suitable for Miss to wear. If the clothes are small, they were worn before. If the clothes are just right, they are worn now. If the clothes are big, they can be worn in the future. Xiao Wanru pulled an embroidery edge on the corner of the clothes and said, the size of the clothes could not prove anything. They are embroidery edges and toggle and loop buttons of Butterfly Clothing Shop, but not all of them. Every piece of other clothes is fine. They are indeed carefully prepared. With a deep look in her watery eyes, her eyes suddenly became cold. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.